Yes, I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem? Okay.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Councilmember Lister.
Cal-
I would love to. All rise. Right hand over your heart, ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
to the republic,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Lister?
Here.
Councilmember Levinos?
Here.
Councilmember Kavanaugh is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Judge?
Here.
And Mayor Mashburn.
Here. Agenda report.
Do you want to read this?
Yeah, I need to read it.
Mayor, I just wanted,
Okay, I'm ready.
did you say agenda review?
I'm sorry?
Did you say agenda review?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself.
Okay, I'll wait. I'll wait till you say it and we're there, so.
I'll read this first. Okay. As you all are aware, the coronavirus continues to require us, including government, to do things differently. At this time, California in general, and Ventura County in particular, are experiencing a rise in COVID-positive cases. This is concerning. With the rise of COVID-positive cases and the continued orders by the state of California and the Ventura County Public Health Officer, Simi Valley and the other 9 cities in the county continue to hold their council meetings without the public in attendance. Although the public is not here, there are still opportunities for the listening public to participate in this council meeting. The public statements procedure has been the same since our April 6, 2020 meetings. As noted on the agenda, the public was encouraged to submit emails concerning tonight's agenda. For emails submitted prior to 12 noon today, those emails have been provided to us. They will be made part of the record, but will not be read by the city clerk tonight. We have 2 opportunities for public statements this evening. The first opportunity is to comment on agenda item 2, which is appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. If you wish to make a comment on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports portion of the agenda, emails received after 12 noon today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the city clerk this evening. Emails should be sent to the city clerk's office at publicstatements@simivalley.org. Include in the subject line agenda item 2 and should be limited to 250 words or less. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed. Subsequently, the city will read the emails received for a period of 30 minutes. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of this agenda item or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. The second opportunity is agenda item 5, public statements item on the agenda. The same procedure will be used for public statements. Emails received after 12 noon today up to the beginning of this agenda item will be read by the city clerk this evening. Emails should be sent to the city clerk's office at publicstatements@simivalley.org. Include in the subject line agenda item 5, limited to 250 words. At the beginning of this agenda item, email receipt will be closed. No new emails will be received and read. The city clerk will begin to read the emails received since noon today, spending 3 minutes on each email. The city clerk will spend 30 minutes total reading emails. For those emails that are not read, They will be entered into the record. So right now, you can still send emails that may be read during the meeting for agenda items 2 and 5. The city thanks you for your patience. During this local emergency, the city is making every attempt to continue to allow the public to participate in the business of the city. With that said, we can move on with tonight's meeting. City Clerk, you may continue. And thank you from the entire council for your patience.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, a closed session report. There was nothing to report from closed session.
Great, thank you. Okay. Agenda review. Any items for review? No?
I just wanted to make sure, Mayor, that we can have discussion over item 3A3. Is that possible? Do we need to move that on the agenda in order to have discussion on that? The proclamation condemning racism,
Yes,
discrimination,
yes,
hatred?
we will have
discussion. That's
yes.
all I was checking. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on the agenda?
I move that all resolutions and ordinances presented tonight be read in title only and all further reading be waived.
Second?
Okay. Motion and second, call for the vote.
Vote yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge, yes.
You need a pencil.
Motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Kavanaugh absent.
Okay. Go through it. Okay, is there anybody that has a declaration of conflict on any of the agenda items tonight? Oh. Mayor Pro Tem Judge, do you have any conflicts?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, there are no items under Agenda Item 1D, certificates, honorary resolutions, and proclamations. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is Item 2, public statements on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. This is the time for public statements on appointments, special presentations, and informational reports. All comments submitted by email prior to 12 noon today have been provided to the City Council and will be made part of the record. However, they will not be read by the City Clerk at this meeting. Comments received by email after 12 p.m. noon today up until the beginning of this public statements item of the agenda will now be read for a period of 30 minutes. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of public statements or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. And Mayor, we do have about 8 public statements submitted.
Okay.
The first email is from Kyle Ballard. Hello, my name is Kyle Ballard. I am a lifelong resident of Simi Valley. I am writing for the third time in a row to ask for city council members to take action for Mike Judge's inappropriate behavior time and time again. I believe Mike Judge has directly violated at least Article 3 of Code of Conduct for council members. His constant posting of inappropriate behavior over the years is just one thing. He should also be ashamed of his response to the young black woman reaching out to him for support in the Black Lives Matter peaceful protest. How do you not see that trying to dissuade a person of color from protesting for BLM is not the move here? We need empathetic and caring leaders in this city, not people who constantly post messages with a divisive narrative. Empty apologies over the years, as well as falling back on it's just a joke or playing dumb does not cut it here. It is not enough to make a statement saying you don't condone this behavior. Actions speak louder than words, and we've seen these empty statements over and over again. Without action of representation, how many times do you have to apologize for a man making you all and this city look bad? I am asking you as our city council members and take action on this situation with censure. I am asking Mike Judge to do the right thing and resign. Thank you for your time. Second one is from JJ Tamagotchi. Hey, Mike Judge, this is a reminder that we are watching everything you do in City Council. Your racist rhetoric will not be forgotten. We will remember your words against BLM. We will remember your threats against protesters. And we will remember the post you published saying Islam is not peaceful. If you can be like that, so can we. ACAB, especially you. Black Lives Matter. This one is from Vanessa Guerrero. It simply states, Black Lives Matter. This next one is from Danielle. Hello, I've been a resident of Simi since 1983. I know this town has tainted history with racism, and the recent issue with Mike Judge and not being voted off City Council has left a really bad taste in my mouth. Simi has an issue with racism that needs to be addressed. All you have to do is scroll through all local community forums to see how rampant it really is. I have supported BLM from the beginning and was touched by the commitment of our citizen to finally make a positive change, but I was competition disappointed in how this council has responded to it, especially allowing Mike Judge a place. He has no place in politics, and his comments and public posts on his own page give you everything you need. Please stop allowing racism in our city. People are working hard to change how this county perceives us. Please don't let us down. Our kids' futures depend on it. Thank you for your time, Danielle. Another one from Candace, Black Lives Matter, best. Candace Thompson, Simi Valley resident. Another one from Elevine, Black Lives Matter. And the last one, Imena Beauty, Black Lives Matter. And that's it for public comments on 2.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is 3A1, appointment of youth council members, and Kristen Tignac is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. The Simi Valley Youth Council was established in 1970 as an advisory board to the City Council on youth-related issues and consists of 21 members and up to 3 alternates in grades 7 through 12. Youth Council members' terms of office expire June 30th of each year. A recruitment to fill the 24 Youth Council positions was initiated on March 5th and concluded on April 30th. A total of 40 applications were received. Interview panels met on June 1st, 23rd, and 24th to interview the applicants. The interview panels nominated 19 applicants for the Youth Council membership and 3 applicants for Youth Council alternate positions. No applications were received from students at Apollo High School or Sinaloa Middle School. A recruitment for these 2 positions will be initiated when school resumes in August. The following Youth Council applicants have been nominated for appointment: representing Royal High School, Ria Monomoran; Anna Sorensen, representing Santa Susana High School, Abhishek Jagannathan; Vivek Tarpare. Representing Simi Valley High School, Ashlyn Rowe and Ashley Kilnick. Representing Hillside Middle School, Priyank Shunivisan. Representing Valley View Middle School, Shamjita Kartik. Representing the community at large, Samaya Akbar, Mateos Roki, Cynthia Rahman Mohamed, Ella McCrossan, Rahul Naveen, Zainab Namishwala, Ian Nelson, Alden Todd, Maya Tauber, Rika Tignac, Peter Long, and as alternates, Monishka Thanwani, Jasmine Esmail, Fane Mori Anand. It is recommended that the City Council authorize and the mayor appoint the 22 applicants nominated to serve one-year terms on the Simi Valley Youth Council commencing on July 28th and concluding on June 30th, 2021. This concludes staff's report, and I would be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. And would you let the applicants know that we sure enjoy it when they're here and can be appointed rather than have to do it this way, but of course with COVID, we have to do it without the public present, so please let them know. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes.
You said that you're going to recruit for Sinaloa and Hillside, Sinaloa and Apollo when school starts? Okay, so will that be on Instagram, Facebook, or?
Name will be at the schools themselves.
Okay.
But we will post on also on.
Because they're going to be learning online, so it wouldn't help to have it at the schools.
We'll send it out on our social media platforms
Yeah.
to make sure everyone's aware of it.
Yeah, otherwise, you could put it on campus, the kids aren't going to be there.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, we try to do the biggest push, at the school and however they're going to be getting out information during this school term.
Okay, great, thank you. And thank you for all the work you do.
And I would just want to commend all the youth who have desired to be part of the group and applied, and I'm sure it was quite a project to interview. And so thank you for going through the process, and excited that we have all of these applicants who've been approved. And I would move that we, if that's appropriate this time, that we appoint them to the Youth Council.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge, you have anything to say?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, ready for a motion?
So I motion that we appoint the youth as presented to the Youth Council.
Second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second, call for the vote.
I vote yes.
You got one there.
Motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Kavanaugh absent. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda, we have item 3A2, selection of 2 City Council members to conduct Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation Board interviews. And Kelly Tinker is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. The Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides endowment and annual financial support for the Simi Valley Cultural Arts Center. The foundation board is comprised of up to 21 voting members. Although it is not a part of the city, the foundation's board includes 7 City Council appointed public members, and there are currently 3 City Council appointed vacancies for terms beginning on September 1st, 2020 and concluding on June 30th, 2024. The city initiated a recruitment that concluded on July 8th, 2020. A total of 5 applications were received, and staff estimates that approximately 1 hour will be needed to conduct the 10-minute applicant interviews. Staff is recommending that City Council select 2 City Council members to interview applicants and nominate 3 to fill vacancies on the foundation board. Council members Levinos and Litster were most recently served on the nominating committee for the foundation board in September of 2019. This concludes staff's report, and I am available for questions.
Okay, I'd like to volunteer. I've been off on the interview boards for the commission and the foundation, so it's time to go back on.
I'll go on it too.
Okay. That's 2? Do you need 2, correct? Okay.
And so I motion that the Mayor Mashburn or Mayor Pro Tem, Mike Judge, serve as the selection committee for the foundation, Cultural Arts Foundation.
Second.
Motion and second. Call for the vote.
I vote yes.
Motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Kavanaugh absent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 3B1, Certificate of Appreciation to Outgoing Youth Council Members, and Kristen Tickneck is also here for this presentation.
Good evening again, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. This evening, we are recognizing 14 outgoing Youth Council members. These individuals have contributed their time and exemplary service on the advisory board to the City Council on youth-related matters. Although these individuals were unable to be present this evening due to COVID-19 restrictions, they are watching safely from their homes and will receive their certificates of appreciation via mail. Please join me in congratulating the following outgoing Youth Council members: Paige Barella, Meghna Behera, Joshua Chandran, Shauzi He, Abigail Jawanmal, Daniela Jones, Parsa Kramath, Chandler Nelson, Om Patel, Kalissa Rowe, Francis Salvanera, Zay Situ, Sneha Sundaram, Tasha Vakil, oops, she's the last one, sorry. To all of these amazing individuals watching from home, I wish you all the very best and want to let you know that it has been a true honor to work with each and every one of you. Thank you.
I feel like we should applaud.
Yeah, and
Mayor, if I may
please
make
send the same regards and thank you, and hopefully they're watching. That would be, although,
They should be, yeah.
well, they're young enough, maybe there's something better going on than the council meeting, but at any rate, I really personally appreciate what they do and having them aboard, and wish they could be here to let us say thank you.
Mayor, if I may make a comment?
Yes.
I just want to make sure, yes. I just want to commend the Youth Council. This was a heck of a year. 2020 has been a heck of a year. But the Youth Council really rose to the occasion. They used their social media platform. They had an online talent show. They shifted, they adjusted, they persisted. They were creative in the use of the online platforms that were available and made sure to include people. And I think there were participants that participated in Youth Council activities that wouldn't have otherwise participated because it was on an online platform. So I know we always talk about the downsides of COVID and not being able to see each other face to face, but the opportunities that they presented for playing games and interacting with each other, I really felt like it brought in new people, and we had a lot of applicants for the Youth Council Youth Council positions, because I think they realized there's more of a component to it, to Youth Council, that it wasn't all just what they usually do. So I'm really hopeful and I'm very grateful that they were able to adjust to the technology, that they were able to adjust to each other. There was compromising, there was meetings, there was learning to use Zoom and all the other technology that went along with doing Youth Council. And because we're not sure how long we're going to be dealing with this pandemic, I'm glad to see that we have our old Youth Council members that will kind of help the new Youth Council members. And when we did the interviews, there were a lot of Youth Council members that, like I said, stepped up to the plate, and they created videos and music, and they just really outshone. So I just want to commend the outgoing Youth Council members, because they really rose to the occasion during this pandemic in a way that I don't think anyone else has. And so I just want to commend all of you, and I wish you all luck in your future endeavors, wherever it is you guys may go, and thank you for all the hard work. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Ms. Stigner.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is 3B2, Certificate of Appreciation to outgoing Neighborhood Council Executive Board members, and Emily Habib is here for this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Mashburn and members of the City Council. This evening, we are recognizing 11 outgoing members of the Neighborhood Council Executive Boards. Executive Board members act as a conduit between residents and the city government on matters that affect their community. During their tenure, these Executive Board members diligently reviewed, evaluated, and made recommendations to the Planning Commission and City Council on many complex development projects. Following are the names of the outgoing Neighborhood Council Executive Board members who, due to COVID-19 restrictions, are unable to be with us tonight. Neighborhood Council 1, Diana Cockrell and Jamie Extract. Neighborhood Council 2, Pam Campo. Neighborhood Council 3, Nancy Frager, Jeremy Cucklin, Mark Luker, and Sean McDonald. Neighborhood Council 4, Susan Varney, Brian Chan, Sherry Rangel, and Gail Sutton. Please join me in congratulating these outgoing Neighborhood Council Executive Board members on a job well done.
Applaud for them. I agree. So, same thing. Thank you so much to the Neighborhood Council members for serving. I wish you were here. Wish we could congratulate you in person and shake your hands. But that's not allowed today. So all we can do is offer our best and hope to see you again very soon.
If I might add, I believe that was 11 people that you just mentioned, if I did my counting correctly. And I know it's a 2-year commitment, and I think it's wonderful, and thank you for going through this. I know I spoke with at least one of them who was prepared to serve longer into October. That was not the way the vote went last time. But I just want to commend them for all of their work, because truly it does advise the work of the City Council, and they are a very important part of this community. And so just, again, wanted to echo my thanks and appreciation. Thank you, Emily.
Okay, thank you, Emily.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 3B3, a proclamation condemning racism, discrimination, and hatred. And Police Chief Livingstone is here to read the proclamation.
The police chief wearing a mask. That's pretty scary.
Reading glasses are really scary.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Whereas the killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery and many other Americans have sparked protests and demonstrations across the country demanding equitable treatment regardless of a person's race, color, ethnicity, national origin, ancestry, or other protected status. And whereas the City of Simi Valley acknowledges the historic role that government may have played in perpetuating social inequities along racial lines that have resulted in vastly different living and social conditions and access to opportunities. And whereas far too many times in history, movements such as Black Lives Matter attempt to bring to light the issues of race, class, and gender that lead to injustices of poverty, housing affordability, income disparity, educational opportunities, homophobia, gender inequality, and access to health care. And whereas the City of Simi Valley recognizes that systemic racism resulting from the inherent biases and prejudices within social and political organizations, groups, and institutions adversely impact Black Americans, Indigenous people, and people of color in many facets of their lives, including wealth, criminal justice, employment, education, housing, privacy, and health care. And whereas the City Council condemns racism, discrimination, and all forms of hatred, none of which will be tolerated in the City of Simi Valley. And whereas the City of Simi Valley values the diversity of our residents who are critical to the city's economic, cultural, and social well-being. And whereas the City of Simi Valley condemns acts of brutality, racial profiling, and the use of excessive force by law enforcement officers, and supports efforts to eliminate these from society. And whereas the City of Simi Valley recognizes its role is to engage and listen to all people to eliminate barriers to participation and overcome disparities. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Simi Valley that it condemns racism, discrimination, and hatred of all forms and commits to a respectful, transparent, and equitable engagement and empowerment of all members of the Simi Valley community to ensure the absence of racism, prejudice, and discrimination, and to ensure the integration of values of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in all aspects of city governance and the community. Presented this 27th day of July 2020.
Thank you, sir. Comments, we'll start with Councilmember Luevanos.
You know, I know that at our last meeting, we had spoken about, giving a resolution that was against racism, but this is a very disingenuous proclamation. There's nothing in here about accountability. It's just words on paper. There's nothing that says that we're specifically going to change any policies, any organizational structures, our budgets, our behavioral directives. I used specifically language that I had submitted to the city manager that was the language from the National League of Cities, because it had a lot more be it resolved than whereases. Whereases just gives you the background of what's been happening. And yes, I'm very glad that the first whereas is there. I'm glad that there's an acknowledgement of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and many other Black Americans that have been killed in this country. And I'm glad there's a recognition. I wish there was something in here about Black Lives Matter, because Black lives do matter. And the reason why we say Black Lives Matter, and the reason why it's important to say Black Lives Matter, is because Black lives matter too. And I know that I've heard the counter of all lives matter, and all lives can't matter until Black lives matter too, because for 400 years, Black lives have not mattered in this country. And that is the reason why there are protests around the country happening right now. Well past midnight, every single day, people are marching in the streets because the message still hasn't gotten through that Black lives matter. And this resolution this proclamation does not do justice. It doesn't change anything. There's no directives that would change the culture of racism or division or intolerance in this community that we're seeing and hearing right outside the doors of the council chambers right now. That's the division that we see. That's the intolerance and the hatred that we see. We cannot eliminate racial bias without condemning racist actions by people on this very dais who refuse to acknowledge or address the uncomfortable issues of racism and acknowledge that Black lives matter, acknowledge that women of color matter, acknowledge that trans lives matter, acknowledge that all those things are uncomfortable issues, but that we still need to talk about. Actions do speak louder than words. We can have all these words on paper, but unless we're willing to change our policies, unless we're willing to reflect on the policies that we set forth as a policy-making body, as a city council, and that includes looking at the budgets, looking at the behavioral directives, looking at the policies across this institution, across all the departments that we have, then there will not be change here, and we will not have the liberty and justice for all that we pledge allegiance to at the beginning of every single one of these meetings. So it is disingenuous to say that we recognize and that we're going to fight against racism, discrimination, and hatred when we have a mayor pro tem that posted violent videos of Mexican women being decapitated. And we did nothing. We did nothing to condemn that behavior. And the message that that sends to our daughters, to our mothers, to our sisters, to our aunts, and to every female in this community is that it's okay. It's okay to act with impunity because there will be no repercussions, there will be no consequences for those actions. And you'll see later on today during this meeting, we're going to have a discussion on the grand jury proceedings for sex trafficking. Why is that? Because the culture in this city is not to respect women of color, not to respect people of color. And until we actually do something about changing those policies and protecting people of color in this community, this proclamation, it's not worth much. They're just words. In Spanish, my mother says, tus palabras se las lleva en el viento. Your words are taken by the wind. Show me with actions. Show me with policies. Show me with accountability that Black lives matter, that people of color matter in this community. And this doesn't show that. This is an empty commitment to the actions that people on this dais have failed to take. We cannot say that we are anti-racist. We cannot say that we are against discrimination if we are not willing to condemn the people who act in racist ways and then who fail to apologize for acting in those racist ways. Not when a young Black woman was denied and berated for exercising her First Amendment free speech rights. Not when we have videos that are being posted time and time again of Latinas and people of color that are dehumanized. That is the culture that we have here that we need to overcome. And until we can sit down and have a true conversation about changing policies and truly respecting everyone's First Amendment rights and listening to diverse opinions, this community, certain people in this community, are not ever going to be treated equally. And that's what we want. We want community. We want unity. We want equality. We want everyone in this community to be treated equally, not more or not less. And this proclamation doesn't do that, because they're just words on paper and there's no policy changes in here. There's no budget shifts. There's no action that shows that we are committed to the work that needs to be done, to the uncomfortable conversations that need to be had in order to make sure that everyone in this community is treated equally. I proposed a proclamation that was aligned with the National League of Cities that actually had some directives for us to do that included that the City of Simi Valley will support strengthening efforts to promote accountability for individual law enforcement officers and police departments with the purpose of eliminating racial bias. That the City of Simi Valley will expedite immediate steps to analyze police departments' organizational structures, policies, behavior directives, and budgets, and will adopt racially sensitive guidelines to promote locally elected leadership's primary responsibility, that's our responsibility, to ensure the health and safety of all of their residents. That the City of Simi Valley is committed to centering our community's responses to the COVID-19 global pandemic in racial equity. If you look at the numbers, you'll see that Latinos are the majority of cases, but we are not the majority of people in the Ventura County. We are disproportionate. Our municipality will dedicate our resources, platforms, and political will and authority, which we have, to identifying and addressing the ways that the novel coronavirus may exacerbate existing inequities in our community. The City of Simi Valley is committed to not using fear, a common tactic throughout history, to scapegoat communities perceived to be other, and setting a tone that will reject any such institutional tendencies. Our municipality will actively advance the medical and social needs of the most marginalized individuals in our community and demonstrate how placing their needs first will ensure the safety and health of all. And this resolution that I had proposed confirms our commitment to perform local actions that promote equity. These values will be reflected and addressed in all local government institutions in Simi Valley. That is our job. Our job is to represent everybody here, everyone in this community. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Council Member Litzer.
Councilmember Luevanos, I'll be honest, I'm disappointed to hear what you just said. You stated culture in the cities do not respect women of color, and I don't believe that. I believe that this city upholds and respects and loves and appreciates people of every race, color, and creed. We're not perfect, which is why we're having this proclamation. Just let people know that we desire to be better. That's what this is about. To suggest that this isn't a good proclamation because nothing is stated about accountability, I think is an error. It is very clear what this states, that we as an institution desire to make all of our policies and all of our practices one that embraces all people. I don't know that you can ever come up with the perfect words on the paper. I don't know that it's physically possible. But what you can come up with is good, positive actions that demonstrate what your desires are. You know, interestingly, as I read through this proclamation today, I was going to make a motion to remove one word and to make a motion to add additional words to this particular proclamation. And I think I'm going to at this time, if that's all right, just so you understand. First of all, I appreciate very much that our police chief, David Livingstone, was the one that read this proclamation. He just read the words Whereas the City of Simi Valley condemns acts of brutality, racial profiling, and the use of excessive force by law enforcement officers, and supports efforts to eliminate these from society, and then going on. I think it shows character that the chief of our police would basically say, we desire to be accountable to eliminate all of these things, period. And I suggest that this does not represent our Simi Valley Police Force at all. But nonetheless, he's willing to echo those words as an ideal and a standard. And I take great pride that our police force has things in place that are taught as far as minimizing excessive force, etc. They are ahead of the game in many ways. And so anyway, that was an aside. But let me come back to how I would have changed this. Whereas the City of Simi Valley recognizes the systemic racism resulting from the inherent biases and prejudices within social and political organizations, groups, and institutions adversely impact Black Americans, Indigenous people, and people of color in many facets of their lives, including wealth, criminal justice, employment, education, housing, privacy, and health care. And I would have changed that. First of all, I would motion that we remove the word systemic, because I do not believe every single institution in this entire country is racist. I simply do not believe it. I believe we have problems in lots of institutions, but not that every single one, which is what the definition of systemic is. In fact, I went to several different dictionaries just to be sure. Cambridge Dictionary states that a systemic problem is basic one experienced by the whole of an organization or a country, and not just particular parts of it. Vocabulary.com says that systemic means it affects all parts of something, or Macmillan Dictionary, affecting all of something. I do believe there are problems. I do think we need to resolve them, but I don't think it is systemic that every institution is filled with it. And so I would strike that. However, in that body, I think we are leaving some groups of people out that should be included. The City of Simi Valley recognizes, I would say, the same clause, this is the fourth one, that racism and discrimination, I would add that word, which we use later on, resulting from the inherent biases and prejudices within social and political organizations, groups, and institutions, adversely impact Black Americans, Indigenous people, people of color, those who are mentally challenged, and physically disabled. I would add those two to that clause. And this includes, and it affects many facets of their lives, including wealth, criminal justice, employment, education, housing, privacy, healthcare, etc. So I would add that we consider adding that. No, we are not a perfect body. No question about that. But we desire for good. The whole reason that we supported the motion last time the city council met was because we desired to proclaim to our city, proclaim to our county, to our state, that we desire to be good, we desire to be better, we desire to be embracive and inclusive of all. So I appreciate that we are taking this step. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
I have no comments.
Thank you. I have to be very careful with my wording, because when you don't agree with someone on this council, it's automatically racist. So I take offense. These words are good words, and this is a great city with very, very little racism. But it's, as Elaine said, it's not a perfect city, and there are cases of, I call them knuckleheads that make dumb moves, and we're going to come across this. But this city, which I've lived in my entire life, has, even when the Rodney King trial been here, was very void of racism, true racism. And I like what Elaine has to say about systemic racism. It just doesn't exist in this city, not the city I live in. And I've lived in every part of this city. I went to school in this city, and I went to school with all the children and multiple cultural backgrounds. And of course, when you're a child, thank goodness, you don't notice those differences then. And sometimes you grow up to think in another direction. But the reality is, I'm proud of these words. These are very good words. These are uniting words, and not always looking for something to be negative. And our police department, absolutely. I cannot think of a time that there was any officer, and I'm looking to you, Chief, to speak up if there is. Has there ever been an officer accused of racism in the department? Yeah, and I'm not either, as a citizen, I'm not aware of it. As a council member, I'm not aware of it. As a representative for the Board of Supervisors, I wasn't aware of it. And as a firefighter out here on and off for 30 years, and in a very diverse fire department, I just, it galls me to think that we're painting this broad brush picture of such racism when I'm not dumb enough to say that there isn't some knuckleheads out there, but that doesn't represent the majority of this community. I look at Black Lives Matter, the words in here, and in my opinion, that's an organization, and I don't say all lives matter. However, all Black lives matter, and nationwide, the blacks are in trouble in a sense, if you will. Look at the number of babies they lose. Look at the number of deaths that occur in their society, culture, whatever you want to call it, which is my culture too. They're all Americans, and I see that, and that troubles me. But there's also, you know, we're a great experiment, they say, of mixing all of these races together. And I wouldn't go so far to say as I'm color blind. I think that's the wrong way of terming things. However, I personally, and the folks I know that live in this city, they look at everybody as their fellow residents, fellow Americans, and then, of course, there's some that happen to be one nationality or another. But again, to point at this body and say that this is not a genuine, or this is disingenuous, is you're wrong. You're 100% wrong. This was meant to be what it is, what the words say it is, and I look at the world that way, and I look at you as you're completely wrong.
Then you're not representing the people that you
I'm not
elected to
asking for any comeback. I didn't disrupt you. Those are my comments.
I'd like to make further comments, Mayor, if I may.
I think we're done.
No, no, we're not done, because when you sit here and you discount me as a woman of color, and you sit here and then you say you don't understand systemic racism, the reason is because people, and you always complain because people don't come and talk to you about the racist things that happen in the city. And this is exactly why, because when you treat me on the dais this way, that sets an example for every other person of color in the city to know that they cannot speak to you about these issues because you are not willing to listen. You are not willing to accept the realities that people of color live with in the city every single day. When you treat me like this on the dais, That sends a signal to every other person that they can't
It says I
talk
pay
to you.
attention to you.
They can't have these conversations
It says
with you.
that I pay attention to you. What do you mean, because I turn and look at you?
No, because you won't even let me address this issue.
Never mind.
Systemic racism is not saying that every single entity is racist, but it is. Systemic racism is having an elected official on the dais and accepting his misogynistic, anti-Muslim, racist comments over and over and over again and not doing anything about it. That's systemic racism. That's telling everyone else in the community that that's okay. Systemic racism is not being able to walk down the street without being harassed because of the color of your skin. Systemic racism is being told that you're not entitled to an IV because you're black. These are the stories that I hear from constituents. Systemic racism is being told that you should go back to Mexico or Africa or wherever the heck it is you came from because you have brown or black skin. Systemic racism is being told that your child can't take the advanced math class because you wouldn't possibly know any other people that are engineers because you're Mexican. That's systemic racism. It's something that I've lived with here in this community for the past 19 years. So don't tell me, do not gaslight me and tell me that these issues do not exist. And if people do not come to you, Mayor, and tell you these issues, it's because of the way that you treat me on the dais, because you're not willing to listen. And good leaders listen, good leaders recognize, and good leaders move forward and recognize the fact that there is systemic racism in this community. And I'm not saying everyone is racist, but
Take a breath, and let me tell you one thing, is you won't accept what I say. You won't accept it.
You just told me that I was wrong.
That's an opinion. I do believe you're wrong in that feeling about the city.
But you're saying that every other person that has spoken to me, every other person of color that has spoken to me about the issues that they've had, from the school system to the city with the police department, that's not true, that there's no racism in this community.
Your general interpretation of this city,
what an insult to people of color.
You and I happen to disagree. We don't have to be mad and yelling at each other.
But you're not disagreeing with me, you're disagreeing with everyone that I've spoken to.
No, I'm not. I love the constituency in this city. I love every resident of this city. And I don't judge them by color.
Then acknowledge, how can you not judge someone by color? That means you don't even see them. You don't see that they're black or brown.
You're putting a spin on it. You're going to make me wrong no matter what I say. So let's just drop it.
I'm just asking you to acknowledge that there is racism and people do experience racism in this city. Not by everyone, but they do experience it. It is a reality. There would not be a need to even have this proclamation if racism didn't exist in this city. If discrimination didn't exist in this city.
I said there's knuckleheads that do stupid things, which could be racism. But it's not everybody in the city. The city is not well known for being a racist city. And that's where you and I disagree.
We were on
There's
MSNBC.
No problem with disagreeing.
We were on national news.
Could I take this?
Okay, I'd like to
I'm
finish.
sorry, I would. Could we take this back to the proclamation? I appreciate the proclamation was read. My question is when a proclamation is read, do we vote to accept it or do we not? We just simply we let it stand as is.
Right.
Or else we could vote to change it or we just let it sit. Is that correct? Okay.
That's it.
Okay. So, let me just put it out there because you've heard my comments before. I just want to take it back that I would like to remove one word and add, as I suggested, to the fourth whereas, racism and discrimination, and I'd like to add mentally challenged and physically disabled to that particular fourth paragraph. So that is my resolution that I made earlier. Is there anyone willing to entertain that as well, or is
I think what we'll do is, if you make that in the form of a motion, and I'd proudly second it.
Okay, so
I just want to clarify, Mayor, are we changing procedure then for proclamations and resolutions? Because we've never done this before.
Go ahead.
Yeah, anticipating some discussion on this, we had moved this proclamation under special presentations, anticipating there would be some council discussion on this. Normally, they are higher up in the agenda under 1D, which would not garner any discussion or any other motions.
And if you feel this sets a dangerous precedent, then we can go forward. But you understand why.
If I could just say legally, it's normal that proclamations aren't voted on because they often are things like Arbor Day, and I just use that as an
Sure.
example, wherein there's very little or no discussion or debate other than, welcoming the issue or whatever. And so if there's going to be discussion, it's got to be farther down on the agenda where there can be public comment, and it's up to the council whether they wish to vote then and discuss a proclamation like this. So yes, you can rely on just the tradition of the city that a proclamation just stands without a vote, or you can make a motion.
Then I will
And you
remove the resolution,
Okay,
just so that we
and
can
I-
go with tradition and leave it as is. Is that?
And I appreciate it, and I have to say that I think it's fair that all of us got a opportunity to voice our comments, either in favor of it or not in favor of it, or want to see changes in special words. And so we all did get, so that we're on the record as how we feel about the proclamation. So I think that's good. Okay, next item.
Next item, item 4, public hearings. All land use public hearings are postponed due to the county stay well at home order and to ensure appropriate opportunity for public input. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 5. This is the time for public statement on all items other than public hearings, appointments, and information reports. All comments submitted by email prior to 12 p.m. today have been provided to the City Council and will be made part of the record. However, they will not be read by the clerk at the meeting. Comments received by email after 12 noon today and up until the beginning of this public statement item on the agenda will now be read for a period of 30 minutes, spending 3 minutes on each email. Every effort will be made to read all emails into the record, but some emails may not be read due to time limitations. Emails received after the beginning of public statements or unread emails will be made part of the record if received prior to the end of the meeting. City Council members may offer a response to the extent possible under Agenda Item 5A. Mr. Mayor, unless you have any comments, we can begin reading the emails. We have approximately 21 or 22 emails received.
Okay, let me ask first, council members, anybody need a break?
If you want one, we can take a break.
I'm fine.
I'm okay. May I suggest, I'm fine. May I suggest, you said we have 21, 22 emails, and we've allotted 30 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we're about halfway there. Do we want to consider expanding public comment time or not?
I don't. I think the rules are clear.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead with reading them.
I'm going to try to read all the emails. Ones that are over 250 words, I'll be stopping within that sentence. The first email is from Linda Tran. Mike Judge, you and your numerous jokes disparage the very community you are obligated to serve. We will no longer tolerate your foolery. If we wanted a laugh, we would go to a comedy club, not our very own city council. One day, students will learn about you in a history book and laugh at you and wonder how such an incompetent and terrible man ever came to be in the city council. The next one's from Delaney Moss. To Keith Mashburn, the way in which you speak to Council Member Luevanos is sickening. You constantly speak to her with a tone of blatant disrespect and condescension, and your comment suggesting her censure was ridiculous. You are a caricature of a small-town mayor, and your lack of leadership is disheartening. To Mike Judge, when you did not appear at the last meeting, I assumed it had something to do with issuing your resignation. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Although it is not too late to resign, I still wholeheartedly encourage you to do so. To Dee Dee Kavanaugh, you continually defend Mike Judge and enable his disgusting actions. You failed to act on behalf of your constituents when you voted against his censure. I assure you that District 1 will remember this in November. To Elaine Litzer, I have included your reply to my email in which you acknowledge that Mike Judge violated the Code of Ethics and said that you are going to raise a motion for censure. You didn't raise that motion, nor did you vote in support. In short, you lied. To Councilmember Luevanos, not only are you the smartest person on this council, but I discovered that you are the most educated too. Thank you for doing what's right and putting up with the ineptitude and stupidity that plagues this council. Finally, to Keith Mashburn, Dee Dee Kavanaugh, and Elaine Lister, today marks 99 days until you are voted out of office. Good riddance. The next one is from William Klepper. Dear council members and mayor, I am familiar with many of the processes needed to put on a successful event. I have been a member of service organizations that assist and make things better in our great city. There are rules to follow set by both the Parks Department and the City of Simi Valley. They are important rules. Why is one council member allowed to break every single rule for an event with no accountability? Yes, we are talking about Ruth. She is unsure of the rules. Has she ever actually ran an event? Has nobody pulled her aside and said, Ruth, you represent the city, not yourself? June 19th, Ruth held an event at Lemon Park. I say Ruth because her tweet clearly states we. All she did was tweet out, we are having an event. See attached for the tweet. Thousands are expected and need food trucks. No city permit, no parks permit, no Ventura County Board of Health acknowledgement. This wasn't a protest since people were instructed to bring chairs, blankets, so I guess I'm safe to say no marching was involved. They had food trucks, food booths, raffles, and a band. I also noticed Ruth's planning commissioner was in attendance, John Castleberry of Simi Valley Democrat Club. This was a fundraiser, so where did the money go? The first in line for some of the money raised should go for police costs and for the permits needed at the very least. Please place on the agenda for a review and accountability of Ruth's actions. William F. Klepper. The next one is from Tom. July 27, 2020, to whom it may concern. As a long-term Simi Valley resident, I have seen politicians come and go. These people do a service for our community and don't ask much in return. It's well known that their part-time job can and often does become full-time. We have a good community here, and so far, everything has been okay. However, recent allegations against City Council member Mike Judge are, in my opinion, being blown out of proportions, because he is a human being and has a sense of humor. Most people do. His Facebook postings have often kept me informed with current problems too, and I appreciate that. Did he post something that in these tense times seem insensitive? Probably. Is he allowed to have a sense of humor? Of course. Some on the council, however, see an opportunity to usurp his years of service by relentless attacks over something obviously meant to be a joke. Council member Judge's job as a Los Angeles police officer is one I do not envy, as most peace officers have a target on their backs lately. He is a dying breed of human, one that puts his own life on the line daily for little pay and no glory. I salute you, Council Member Judge. You do countless good for our city, and I will proudly vote for you again. Perhaps we should actually be looking at other council members who fly altered American flags in their taxpayer city office, which violates the American Flag Code adopted by our federal government in 1942. And we've reached the word limit on that email. The next one is from M's Jim. Dear council members, I am again writing you to give my full support to Mike Judge. Mike has one goal: take care of the residents of Simi Valley. With all of the noise going on right now and the socialists trying to destroy our democracy as we know it, Mike will always fight for the residents in Simi Valley to make sure our voices are heard and not trampled on by the left, socialist, and progressive, trying to bring their false agenda to Simi Valley. This is not what the residents here want, and Mike Judge will always make sure he protects our rights and the rights given to us under the First Amendment and the U.S. Constitution in its entirety. The City Council should not be taking any recommendations or comments from anyone who is not a resident of Simi Valley. Any comments made by anyone outside of Simi Valley should not be given any credence, consideration, or merit, let alone the time of day. Mike Judge came out in opposition of riots, looting, assaults, and arson, to name just a few felonious acts of Marxists, anarchists, and others seeking to destroy this country and the rights of the U.S. citizens. Mike Judge should be commended for standing up for what is right and defending the U.S. and the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the citizens of this great city. Mike Judge represents Simi Valley, and we, the residents of Simi Valley, need him to continue to fight for us and our rights. Thank you, Karen Marino. The next one is from Mark P. Medina. Council members, this letter is in total support of Councilman Judge. The mob is trying to oust him for posting a joke. Personally, I think it's a great idea to use raw sewage to disperse rioters that are burning, looting, and destroying other people's property, public or private. Please do not cave. Give them an inch and they will take a mile. It will never stop. Where was all the hue and cry when Kuka abused her office on day one? Crickets. Where was the hue and cry when Soika got his deuce? Crickets. Thank you for listening. Mark Medina, Simi Valley citizen and business owner since 2002. The next one's from Liana Brand. My last public statement request about this went unanswered, so I asked the City Council, do you not see the hypocrisy of denying volunteers the opportunity to serve in our community because you don't like their social media posts? But you allow a city councilman completely off the hook for extremely vile and racist commentary? I asked, how can you possibly justify keeping Mike Judge as mayor pro tem? How can you allow him to serve on community boards? Mayor Mashburn himself stated that people who post questionable things on social media are unfit to serve on community boards. So I ask how you justify keeping Mr. Judge in such a place of prominence. If he is acceptable to be on a community board, then I demand that you appoint me, Leanna Brand, to the Arts Foundation as I was vetted, recommended, and presented to the City Council. I expect the City Council to address this matter. Ignoring this only shows how completely biased against progressive voices you are. I'll be listening. I'll be waiting. Sincerely, Leanna Brand. Samantha Cano. As I am sure you are all aware, these last several City Council meetings have been a gathering place for anti-racism, anti-Mike Judge, and Black Lives Matter protesters. We have used these protests to call for the removal, or at the very least, censure of Mayor Pro Tem Mike Judge for his racist rhetoric in the wake of the modern civil rights protests around the world. However, at the last meeting, you, the council, decided instead to disavow Judge's racism. Basically, that means you let him get away with it with nothing more than a metaphorical slap on the wrist. You have made it very clear to us that you are okay with having Judge, a man in position of power and authority, sit among you despite the way he very clearly regards non-white members of this community and, more broadly, citizens of this country. It is important to note that the Amendment 1 of the Constitution does not mean that one cannot be fired from their job for things they say or post on social media. All it means is that the government cannot punish you for saying anything that is not obscene or does not incite harm. An excerpt from this article from Media Bistro, which I think most of you could stand to read, states that, in quotes, many continue to mistakenly believe that their right to freedom of speech also extends to the workplace. Free speech only applies when the government is trying to infringe upon it. Judge's post about hosting protesters with septic tank contents and his shared photo of a tank pointed at a black man captioned, I know at least one person who could approve of this, regardless of if he meant them as a joke, could be argued as inciting violence. And I need to stop there because we met the 250 quota. The next one is Safia Bagdassaran. Dear City Council members, thank you for the draft of the proclamation against racism. I found it to be very thoughtful, and I thank you all for the consideration given to the wording used. Only by acknowledging that systemic racism exists, that it has dire consequences for POC, and then taking a stand against it, can we ever work together to make Simi Valley the best community it can be. Sincerely, Dr. Sophia Bagdassaran. Cassandra Douglas, Black Lives Matter. Kay Rice, Black Lives Matter. Martha de la Cruz, Black Lives Matter. Diane Robertson, Black Lives Matter. Attention, City Council, the residents of Simi Valley expect you to represent all of us in a professional manner. We will not stand for partisanship, politics, racism, and anything other than all inclusion in city matters. And to be clear, we support well-trained, thoughtful, community-based policing, focused on nonviolence. Pay attention, we will be voting for compassion and integrity. D. Robertson, 30-year Simi Valley resident. Gemma M. Thank you, Ruth Luevanos, for working so hard to represent the people of Simi Valley. Week after week, I am shocked to see how you are treated by some of your colleagues. Thank you for not sinking to their level and leading by example. You are so brave to show up and represent your constituents. You are the only one questioning where our city's money is going. You are the only one standing up for what is right. You are a true leader, and you have inspired many of the city's residents, both Democrats and Republicans, to get more involved. Our city needs more leaders like you. Thank you for your service. Ms. Martinez. From Paul West. My name is Paul West, Simi Valley resident for 56 years. It has come to my attention that the city of Simi Valley, including the police department, have been and continue to delete or hide Facebook comments that does not agree with the Simi Valley government, and departments of Simi Valley government must have a neutral viewpoint with regard to the social media sites that have open comment sections. It is an unconstitutional act to delete comments that are not favorable while leaving the ones that are. And then an excerpt. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that the interactive portion of a public official's Facebook page is a public forum, so an official cannot block people from it because the opinions they hold. And if the government agency opens that page to public comment, the interactive space of the Facebook page constitutes a public forum. The fact that the page exists on a website owned by a private company does not change that. That means that when a public official blocks critics from the page because of their viewpoints, they violate the Constitution. Indeed, the right to criticize the government is at the heart of the First Amendment. The court specifically recognized blocking as infringing on that right. Nothing that blocking someone in order to silence criticism of government work is itself evidence of government action. I expect this policy to be overturned and the rights of the citizens to be restored. Ethan Lansdale, Black Lives Matter. This one's from Robbie Hidalgo, DES Order Number 1, Supplement Status. Public comment regarding DES Order Supplement. On April 6, 2020, a proposal for supplement to DES Order Number 1 was submitted to the Council, providing for the critical safeguards already adopted by 95% or more than 150 California cities with COVID-19 related relief orders, including reasonable and feasible repayment terms to protect the solvency of our local businesses, residents, and our fragile economic development. At the June 6 meeting, Mayor requested City Manager to provide a brief report at the June 29th meeting regarding this issue. However, no such report was disseminated. City Manager attested, 1, he has hesitated to enact provisions of the supplement based on may or may not action by the state, but, number 2, repayment terms and charges would absolutely be addressed. However, in the July 21st Ventura County Star, city attorney was quoted saying that the repayment and late fees in Simi Valley is a civil matter between landlords and tenants. With all due respect, that statement lacks analytical merit. The entire unlawful detainer process is a civil matter between landlords and tenants. Yet DES, number one, directly intervenes in that process with respect to initiation of the action. There is now a tremendous discrepancy in this matter, and that is not reflective of transparent governance, particularly during an unprecedented economic crisis. I am therefore requesting motion and second to take place the supplement proposal on public agenda and allow each of your votes to go on record regarding protection of our small businesses' solvency, residential security, and establishing the essential economic stability of our city. The next one is R.F. Gonsrub. Thank you, Mayor Mashburn and City Council members, for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Rodrigo Gonzalez Rubio, and I have been a Simi Valley resident since 1971. I am perplexed by the lack of personal growth exhibited by Council Member and Mayor Pro Tem Mike Judge. In his apology from the dais on June 8, 2020, he stated, "Yes, I am embarrassed. I am very embarrassed. I said it publicly. I have apologized for the joke I made. It was not in good taste. It was foolish, and I shouldn't have done it. You may not think my apology is sincere, but it is. I can't change the way you feel about me. Obviously, unless you meet me and talk to me, you're not going to know what I am or what I'm like." He also stated, "I can't change people's perception of me. I'm sorry about that. I can't." What I infer from such statements is that Mr. Judge is not contrite enough, nor does he care enough to make the appropriate changes to how he chooses to behave, to at least begin to change the way many of our community feel about him. He seems unwilling or lacks the strength of character to do what it might take to change people's perception and repair his reputation, or he's only interested in trying to impress his narrow-minded, I cannot even read this word, what a shame. Also, he said that by posting memes on Facebook, he was making a commentary on our COVID situation, because for the last 2 months, obviously everyone on the city council, I think, I'm not positive, I'm speaking for myself, has been trying to get our folks back to work and figure out what we need to do to get folks back to work. And one of the things the doctors have said was wearing a mask. A couple of the other memes I've posted, if you look at the theme, they're all making fun of mask wearing. And I've reached the $250 word limit. And we do have some that came in. This one is from Ewing Tracy S. And it just says, "True Simi Valley patriots understand Black Lives Matter, Dr. Tracy Ewing." And we're at the end of the comments.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next item on the agenda is item 5A, City Council comments regarding public statements. Mr. Mayor, you may begin 5A.
I just want to thank everyone who, I'm always grateful for our residents engaging in civic discussion. So thank you for all of you who took the time to engage. I know this is a different format, but thank you for sending in your emails, sending in your comments so that we know that you are engaged, even though we're in the middle of a pandemic and this is different than the way we have usually done it. So thank you to everyone who sent in emails, because that's how we know what you guys are thinking and feeling and what your issues are that you would like for us to address. I will be making an IMB request with regard to Mr. Ravi Hidalgo's comment at the end. We have, that's all I have to say about that. I'm not going to go into details, but I'll be making a request on that. And again, thank you everyone who expressed their opinions and their viewpoints on all the things that have been happening in our city.
Councilmember Litzter.
Yes, just a few things. I wanted to thank, I believe it was Dr. Sophia Gazaran, maybe saying her name incorrectly, who wrote that she was appreciative of the proclamation and thought it was very thoughtful. And so I appreciate that she took the time to write it and felt it was a good document. I, too, was going to respond to Robbie's comments, Mr. Hidalgo's, that I do think it is definitely time to discuss reparations or repayment terms just because of the longevity, but we'll be discussing that later. There were a couple of other quick things that came. What we heard was what was read over the dais, but there were some public comments that came in the form of email. I just had a couple of quick questions that came from that. One asked whether Simi's ever considered a law for apartments and condos to address smoking in common smoking areas. I'm not sure what the laws are on the books, but I think I would, maybe Brian, you can discuss that later, whether that is.
Yeah, I would think that's
a 9, is that a 9? Okay.
Comes from staff.
Absolutely. And the other last one was a question. There was several letters had concerns about COVID, et cetera. And one person made the statement that California gets $145,000 per COVID-19 case, and her argument was that there's a financial incentive. I didn't know if that was based on any fact that our city manager was aware of. That statement was made, and so I just wondered if there was any substantiation. I know we're going to be speaking a little bit about the emergency order, et cetera, but I just thought I would acknowledge that question that was raised.
It would be difficult to determine if there is $145,000 per case because no one knows how many cases there are, and the money's already been allocated by the federal government on a per capita basis. So I'm not quite sure if there's a whole lot of legitimacy to that.
Okay.
And that too, wouldn't that be a question for the county health care? Or at least
County or your state officials?
Sure.
Yes.
I just
Money
wondered
flows through the
if there
state.
was any awareness on your part. Okay, thank you. That was it. Again, appreciate all the comments that were made. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge, any comments?
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is item 6, the consent calendar, and there are no resolutions for consideration.
All right, anybody questions on the consent calendar?
Okay, Mayor, I would like to poll items 2, 3, 4, and 5, but they're not long questions. They're like short questions.
2, 3, 4, and 5.
I had a couple questions on 2 and 4, so that's fine.
Okay, so we'll mention those later.
Great.
Okay, so let's pull,
Number 2 is the cybersecurity strategies.
I can try and address it.
okay, 2 is, I'm sorry, cybersecurity.
No, I got it.
You want to go first?
Either way, right?
You can go first.
Sure, okay. You were asked to respond on a variety of issues, and recommendation number R2, the city responded, "We will not be implemented because they are not warranted or not reasonable." And my question was, is that, in your opinion, was that because of cost, or was it because of effectiveness? It had to deal with security protocol. I believe with protocols.
Is that RO2?
Yes,
Did you see the response?
I did, and I wanted a little more explanation, understanding of that. I didn't. The response. I had questions about the response. Yes.
Yeah, I believe that our administrative services as well as our IT people did not feel that it was necessary. However, we do use the protocols in order to protect our website in order to keep it from being hijacked. But the simivalley.ca.gov doesn't necessarily get us to any particular point. I'm sorry, the simivalley.gov doesn't get us in any better position than we are today.
So it wasn't the $2,000 for 5 years, as it stated, it wasn't the cost. It was
That's a
just-
trivial-
So it really was
expense.
efficacy. You didn't
Yes.
think it was more effective. Okay, that was what I
Yes,
wanted to
yes.
understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you have questions on Simi?
Yeah, I have, on this issue, but I want to make sure Councilwoman Wiltzer.
Is that all you had on?
Yeah, that was it. Thank
Okay.
you.
So I see here, and so I have one on RO2 and then RO6. The recommendation 2 for RO2, it says we will not register simivalley.gov. So does that mean that someone else can buy that domain? Because I am concerned about that.
No, the government won't allow non-government entities from,
Okay, so no one else can use that? and
That's correct.
Say, okay.
you could not get it.
Okay, good. The next question I have is with the recommendation for RO6. It says that the grand jury recommends cities develop personnel cost-saving opportunities to create a cybersecurity talent pool by recruiting interns or graduating students. And I'm extremely concerned about, not that we don't have some extremely talented college students, but I am, you can understand my concern about handing over our cybersecurity to college students, and I don't know what, if that's being done. I know there's an MOU there, and that you guys are looking at registering with the National Science Foundation, but and looking at candidates. But I want to make sure that there's something in there that says, A, they're not going to steal our stuff, or sell it, or use it, or abuse it, or I just want to make sure we keep our security as a city. So I am concerned. I know we want to save money, but at the same time, it could be like like coding and stuff like that, but not, like writing HTMLs. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so
Yes.
we're able to control what every employee's access is into the system,
Okay.
including any interns that may come to work for us. We have given interns, and we've had high school interns, quite frankly, that have been amazing, working on putting in, doing website data, website information, creating, fixing links on our website, doing all kinds of material things of that nature. But in terms of getting into the system itself, where the system is vulnerable, we will not allow them access to that.
Okay, and that
And we're
would-
able to, our IT folks are able to monitor, they monitor on an hourly basis access, because we're getting hacked
All the time.
literally daily.
Okay.
And so they're monitoring any activity that may happen on a regular basis.
Okay, so, and they would sign, whoever it is that we bring on as an intern, whether they're a high school or college student, they have to sign an
Yes.
agreement that's saying, okay.
Oh, absolutely.
I just want to make sure that,
Yep,
because
yep.
I know it said MOU, but I'm like, I don't know what's in the MOU, but I want to make sure we're protected. My last question is about the response to recommendation RO7. And it talks about cybersecurity documentation, but it's not under, it says require further analysis, so does that mean we're not, we're thinking about it, we are going to require cybersecurity insurance? What is the advantage or disadvantage, or what other, I guess, is there other research that we need to do before we require vendors to have cybersecurity insurance?
I think there's a better understanding of to what level of security we need, cyber insurance we need, and what level that needs to be done. We do have some level of insurance. It's a matter of what increase that we need to do. That's part of the overall analysis that we're going to continue. And I will note that one of the recommendations of the grand jury is to come back with a full report by the end of the year on comprehensively what everything is in here. And we'll be doing that, bringing that back to the council before the end of the calendar year.
And is that-
But this is really for us to analyze the level of insurance that we would require each vendor. At some point in time, you hit a diminishing returns that we may not be able to get enough vendors to do our work if our insurance requirements are too high. So we need to do that analysis.
Is any cybersecurity breach, would that be covered by any other insurance that the city has, any other liability insurance that we have?
Yes.
Okay.
We currently have insurance to cover
So
breaches.
when we get when that analysis is done, can we make sure that that's all included so that we're aware? Because since we're the policy-making body that's always dealing with lawsuits,
Yep.
I want to make sure that we're covered, that
Yes.
we have enough insurance, but that it's affordable as well, but look at all the angles that we have to protect ourselves financially.
To the level that we would want to disclose it to the public, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I did have one more question, if that's all right, Mayor.
Number 2.
Yes, on number 2. On FA10, this is page 13 of the final report. It's speaking of the Department of Homeland Security's designated cybersecurity and infrastructure agency to be the lead federal government. Basically, they're asking it's that cities should use this free CISA resource. They said that only one city is actually taking availed.
That's us.
Are we the one? That's what I wondered. It doesn't name us, but
Yeah,
well.
that's us.
Okay, kudos. I was hopeful and wondered. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah. iPads are slower than,
Okay, questions? Number two's okay, we'll leave it alone, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I had some questions for, if I may, Mayor? Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you.
Great.
Are you good?
Good.
I had some question about, we get the reports every month, and thank you, Chief Livingstone, for providing those. But, for a while, we were the number one, we were the county in the state of California that had the highest level of domestic violence. And so I'm concerned about, what's happening with human trafficking and whether or not we're in a position to be able to do anything about that. I just got an email today. I don't know if the rest of my council members or colleagues got that email regarding the concern of human trafficking. I know that the Sir Optimus Club has done awareness campaigns about that here in council chambers and in the community. But, I am concerned about human trafficking. I am concerned about, what we're doing here. I wanted to know, how many massage parlors do we have? I know it's been brought up by Ventura County detectives that, there are massage parlors that are being used for human trafficking here. I am concerned because today, I took my daughter to the dentist and there was a massage parlor that they had covered all the windows with paper. So it didn't say they were closed or they were out of business,
Right.
but you couldn't see inside. So there was no way to know what the hay is happening in there.
Right.
And so my concern is, I want to make sure that our officers are safe, but I also want to make sure that there's not human trafficking that's happening behind closed doors right now, and especially right now during the COVID pandemic. So can you speak to that, Chief?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we do have businesses in town that do engage in the illicit sex traffic. A number of years ago, our ordinance was superseded by state law, so all of our enforcement stopped because the states came in and basically superseded local authority over those. And then at the time...
I'm going to assume you guys are still there. Everything just went dead.
What?
Can you repeat that, Councilman Judge?
What was that?
Yeah, all of a sudden the whole audio thing shut off. I didn't hear what the chief was saying.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So the state of California superseded local enforcement of those locations. And so there was, I believe, a couple of years where there wasn't any active enforcement going on, and we got the authority back. I know we rewrote the local ordinance, and immediately we went out and started enforcement operations again. So we've closed down a number of the illicit businesses here in Simi. Unfortunately, they come back at different points, but we stay on top of them. In terms of the human trafficking connection, I think any sex trafficking that's happening in a massage parlor is linked to human trafficking. The difficulty that we have, as well as other law enforcement agencies, is following that path to get to the people that are in the networks that are controlling it. So in Simi Valley, we found that I would say probably all of our massage locations that we've conducted enforcement on have been Mandarin Chinese. We bring an interpreter with us, and we cite them for the municipal code. It's a misdemeanor, and we then follow through with those investigations to try to see if we can get up higher in the chain to get to the network. The problem is the cooperation from the people who are being cited, and therefore it's usually the property owner that then we end up interacting with and then taking further action so that they lose their license. They have an appeals process that they can go through, and I am the hearing officer of the first appeal on that, and then it goes to the city manager if they appeal my decision. And so I can say that in all the decisions that have come before me, we give them a fair hearing. But in the cases that you can clearly see what's going on there, we revoke the licenses and those businesses are stopped. I think one of the problems that we're seeing in the county is that all of us are dealing with different local ordinances, and I think part of what the grand jury's intent here is to do something in terms of making an ordinance that we can use in the county so that they don't leave from one location and go to another location, which quite often happens when they get cited in one location, they'll try to set up under a different name. They use multiple names. Most of them are all of them in our city are licensed by the Massage and Training Council, and so they lose that license as well if they're engaged in that. So, in terms of human trafficking cases, those are more extensive. They take a lot more work, and it takes cooperation from the people you're arresting and coordination with the other agencies. So we participate in the task force for that, and whenever there's a situation where we do have a link or we think that we're going to have somebody that's going to cooperate, we're able to draw on the resources of our county partners to follow up on those investigations.
I know for a fact, because I teach health at a high school, and I know that, and I also have a criminal justice, a background, so I know for a fact that there's a lot of grooming that happens online. And, my concern is with COVID right now and kids being online, for multiple hours at a time, and parents not always understanding, that a kid can just click on a tab and be on a completely different page.
Right.
That, that is what happens is that, young people will send pictures to someone that they think they're dating online, and then they use that as blackmail, and that's how a lot of people get into human trafficking. So
That's
is there any outreach that we're doing with our schools, with the health teachers, to let them know, like, this is what healthy relationships are, these are the boundaries that you can set? What are we doing to coordinate the education component to our young people and to our parents to let them know, hey, this is how you prevent this from happening?
Not last year, but the previous year, we had noticed an increase in those type of crimes, not related to the Asian massage parlors that we have in town that have been involved in that, but we had a rise in sex crimes. Unfortunately, like a lot of other crimes against persons, that people are known to each other in most of our cases, and so we started to really look at what was causing that, and as you said, online, apps and websites and things like that where people link up. You're exactly right. They end up purporting themselves to be someone that they're not, and sometimes the people will meet up, and these incidents will occur. Also in our group homes here in Simi Valley, there's a lot of that going on where the kids will get online and they'll leave, and then they're reported as a missing person or a runaway, and then we get involved at that aspect. So what we did last year was we started to go into the schools, not specifically with health teachers, but just as part of our interactions with the schools and putting out notices in the schools about online security and things like that. And then over last year, our sex-related crimes dramatically decreased. And so I'd like to sit here and say it was because of those outreach efforts that happened, but I think a lot of it is just making more people aware of the fact that it's just because you can sit there on a computer online and meet people doesn't mean that the person you're communicating with is the actual person that you think you're talking to. So it's important for us to keep doing that. I know that when we do get those cases, our detectives rigorously investigate them and follow as far as they can in the chain, and we do get a lot of prosecutions on those cases, so that helps. But it's something that we're constantly aware of. The ability of predators to reach out through cyberspace is unbounded, and it's a challenge for law enforcement to try to track all of those and to prevent everything from happening in those cases.
Is there any way that our police department could put a link to the Megan's Law website, which is a tool that I've used multiple times, to let our residents know, if they're concerned that there are, predators in the area or the region, they would be aware. And I know that some of those are very old, but at the same time, at least there's an awareness of who was and who wasn't in your community. And I don't know, I haven't seen it on our Simi Valley Police Department website, but it would be nice to have that there.
We've done it in the past. We haven't done it recently. I think the last time we did it was about, I want to say 2 years ago. We did a campaign through the internet about Megan's Law website and through our Nixle and Facebook, but we haven't done it recently. So
yeah, given the uptick that we've had in, like you said, the missing teenagers and all those things, I think especially right now, like I said, with so many teenagers that are online for such a large amount of time, and the report that I got, I saw that, I noticed the uptick in sexual assaults and in rapes, and whatever it is that we can do to keep our residents safe during this time right now,
I think the public outreach, educational programs through our school resource officers in the schools talking to kids, I think that's really the important part of it, because there's only so much we can do in those crimes that are linked to people that are in relationships because very rarely does a police officer get involved in those unless there's actually somebody that calls. So, and that goes to domestic violence as well, too. Those are the most difficult crimes to prevent, and you do so through education. And then when you do get called out to a location where there might be a domestic argument going on that hasn't reached a violent standpoint, there's a lot of education we provide to people, and then we do follow-up calls to make sure that, like a lot of times what happens in those cases is that the parties are separated, that one agrees to go somewhere else for the night. But then what we do is routinely, a couple weeks later, we'll make a follow-up call on that location to see what's going on. So, ideally, you want to try to intervene at an earlier, at the earliest stage possible, because they are difficult. They happen rapidly. They happen within the confines of the home, which, we don't have access to. So when we do get those reports, we follow up on them, and we try as best as we can to mitigate those that can be mitigated.
And again, I'm asking for the, I know you said we have people on campus, but the kids aren't going to be on campus starting August 17th. We
Right.
don't know when they're going to return to campus. So that's why it's really important to have the online resources and the online support, because otherwise there is no support. There's no way to communicate with our
Right.
students who are not going to physically be on campus.
Right. It's a
come August
challenge.
17th.
It's a challenge.
So
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking for whatever support. And I know that's asking a lot of you in your department, but it's an important issue.
Absolutely. No, we understand it, and it's something that, like I said, it's a challenge, but we do the best we can. And I think with our Public Relations Bureau, I think that there's some things that we can do through Facebook and social media, to reach other people in those regards. So.
Okay, and to the extent that I know, it's not in this report, but in the next report, it's listed that there's at least 5 bilingual officers. To the extent that we can offer that information in English and in Spanish, and if possible, Tagalog and Arabic are the 2 next most prominent languages.
Correct. Yeah, I think right now we have about 10 bilingual officers, and I know we always have somebody on duty, so that if we come across a situation like that, we are able to draw in from our own staff to be able to communicate with people.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, can we move on? Someone, I think it was Ruth, wanted to pull 4.
I'm going to move the chief down to this mic because we seem to be having difficulty on that one.
Okay, question on 4, Councilmember Lueminos.
I have a question on that one too, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
On 4?
Yes, on 4, if that's all right. This issue has to do with our jail system, et cetera. On page 24 is when it actually specifically talks about our Simi Valley jail. And one of the statements that is made in that is that detainees are not usually afforded the opportunity of a phone call. And so my question is, why is that the case?
Because it's a temporary holding facility, it's not a jail, and routinely we don't use it. We go straight to the East Valley Sheriff's Station or Ventura Main Jail, and the law states that upon booking, the person is entitled to a phone call. So
if they're being interviewed or asked questions, et cetera, they're not booked yet, and that is why they would not have an opportunity for a phone call there?
That is correct. It's the law is basically upon their booking into jail, meaning the intent to charge them. But when they're in the temporary holding facility, generally speaking, and that's, like I said, I can't even think of the last time we brought somebody back in there to process them, because we don't have the facilities there. We don't have medical staff, so we go straight to East Valley with them. And at that point, the point that they're booked, they're entitled to the phone call. So up until that point, they're not.
So you're saying that we have the jailing facilities, but they're really never used?
Well, they
seldom used.
They have been used, just seldom. There's issues with some of the in terms of medical people that have medical problems and things like that. So we don't have that capability, and we're guided by the Health and Safety Code on what we're rated as a temporary holding facility. So we're really not supposed to keep people in there for any length of time. We don't have the ability, to provide around-the-clock food. I mean, we have the ability to provide what we have to by law in terms of the temporary holding facility,
sure.
But it's really, it adds an extra step for the officer when most of the time you can just go straight and have them booked in a county facility, which is the ultimate end result anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, number 5.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor, I had a question on this report, on item 4. On page 23, it says that most signage throughout the building is in English, and I looked at other police departments, and I saw that, several of the other ones had signage in English and in Spanish.
Yes.
And I know that I myself have gone to the police department with friends who do not speak English, and I have had to translate for them. But when I'm not available and there are other residents that speak Spanish in Tagalog, like they don't know how to get in touch with someone, especially when the receptionist. I know it says here in the report on page 23 that a receptionist is present and available in the lobby, but that's not always the case.
Right.
A, and B, there's no instructions, like there's no way to know. Right now, you can't even get into the police department, like if you went because of COVID.
Right.
You have to call, and there's no instructions on the outside in English or in Spanish. So people are like, I don't even know how to, without calling, on the phone, the police
Right.
department, how would I go to the police department to file a report? Because some people want to do it in person. So I'd like to see that we have signage, throughout the building in English and in Spanish, at least to get in contact
Right.
with one of our, 5 to 10 bilingual officers that we have.
Right.
Because otherwise, people can't file a report.
Well,
if
and
they
we
don't
also
know.
we also have bilingual personnel working in the communication center, and if somebody like a lot of times somebody will come in and they speak a language that somebody in the communication center doesn't speak, and so we have a connecting service that can get to any different language. And a lot of times I've seen where people will walk in, they don't speak English, and they're connected right away with a translator on the phone. So we do have the ability to do that, but in terms of multiple language postings, right at the front counter, I think where you're talking about in the front desk.
I'm talking about like literally getting through the door to even
Right.
like talk to a police officer. Like there's nothing in any other language. It's very difficult
Right.
just to even go and file a report because it's just not very clear. And I'm saying this from like my own personal experience and other friends that have gone as well.
Right.
So whatever process that we need to make it clearer and to have it in multiple languages so that people are aware, this is the process. You call, someone's going to answer, but there is someone here but not physically here, because when you walk in, there's nobody, right? And it's like, wow, it's abandoned. I'm just going to go home. And so, we need to have a clear, in big sign somewhere that says, pick up the phone and someone is here, but they're behind. I didn't know till I took a tour of the police department how many
Yeah.
people are behind.
We can certainly take a look at that and make it
Yeah.
more clear. I mean, we do have 2 phones on the outside, and it hasn't really been a problem. We haven't had anybody complain about it, but it's definitely something that we will certainly take a look at and try to make it more clear.
Yeah, because people have just said, well, I don't know how to do this, so they just go home. They would just walk away, and that's not what we want.
We'll take a look at the signage.
Yeah.
Well, and that's something that we could get together anytime. We don't need to
Right.
do it during the consent calendar, but we could get together and meet with them and go through the process.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's clear.
Yeah. Okay, number 5. You got a question on number 5?
I did, hold on, I'm waiting. I gotta go one page at a time. Yeah, my only question on this was on page 1 of the memorandum. It says for the contract for the consulted broker to provide the following services. On the second bullet point, it says monitor and interpret plan utilization, including strategies to control high utilization and claims. And, when I saw that, I'm a teacher, right? And I have insurance through my employer. And I'm like, are we hiring someone to tell our employees not to use the benefits that they have? Because that's what it sounded like, or to discourage them from using the benefits they have. That's my concern.
Not at all, but they do monitor the utilization, because if there's a product that we are using more than maybe another product, we might want to know that, hey, we're getting a lot of use out of our EAP, that a lot of employees are benefiting. Or if they're not utilizing it a lot, then we might want to advertise it a little bit more to our staff and say we do have this available.
Yeah, I guess the word that, stuck out for me was that it said including strategies to control high utilization and claims. And it just seems like it's discouraging people from sitting. And one of the reasons why people take government jobs and stay in government jobs despite, having the workload and the pay cuts and all that stuff during downturns is because of the benefits. And so I want to make sure that we are not, trying to discourage our employees from using the benefits that they are entitled to.
Yeah, not at all, not at all. We want them to be able to access the benefits and use them, understand how they can use them most appropriately, and if they are having, larger dollar claims, then we want to be able to, kind of work with them and provide them assistance.
Yeah, so I guess I would rather the term, include strategies to effectively use, the benefits as opposed to controlling how you, it's like, don't use your benefits. And I don't want that to be the case. I want to make sure we have a positive culture here to support our employees.
Provided by helpers anyways.
Okay. That was my question.
Yeah, can I just ask one quick historical question, if that's all right? So I appreciate the fact that this was put out to formal bid process. You had 7 applicants, narrowed it down to 4, and so in essence, we're approving a contract that is 5 years with 2. And so I guess historically, how we are currently using USI as the carrier. How long have we been using them? Is this an ongoing, lengthy relationship, or is this a relatively new relationship?
No, it's we've had a lengthy relationship with USI, and they've been provided superior service for us. They managed an outstanding open enrollment last year with 14 different vendors available for our employees to be able to consult with. Last year, we worked together, we negotiated, we got down in all savings on our mental health for our general unit.
But we've used them then for multiple years.
We've used them for multiple
Okay.
years now. They've been, proven,
Okay.
they're a proven commodity.
For our city. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Is there any way that the employees can rate the service that they get? Like, is there any feedback from the employees to say, hey, it's great service, or no, it's terrible, or can you switch, or like, is that taken into account at all?
We do solicit them after open enrollment and see, how has their satisfaction been through the open enrollment process. As far as with, we are with helpers for medical, so they don't necessarily tell us directly, often if they have challenges with helpers for their medical, but dental, they will give us some feedback on that.
Okay. In the future, I'd like to see that, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic, people relying on their health care.
Sure.
We want to make sure that they're happy with what they have and that they're going to be around. And that we're giving our employees, the ability and the happiness of being able to work for the city of Simi Valley.
Yeah, CalPERS offers 12 different medical plans, so it's a large choice for them to have either HMO, PPO, Kaiser, and so.
Yeah, and that also affects how, us being able to attract new employees, and keep the ones that we have, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
then.
looking for a,
Can I move for the consent calendar that we approve all 5?
I'm sorry?
I was just making a motion that we approve the consent calendar,
Okay.
items 1 through 5.
I second.
Second.
Okay, call for the vote.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Kavanaugh absent. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the item on the agenda is continued business, item 7A, consideration of a resolution confirming and renewing the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency and ratifying DES Order Number 2. The reading of the resolution is as follows. Resolution number 2020-40, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Simi Valley confirming and renewing the proclamation of the existence of a local emergency. And City Manager Gabler is here for this presentation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, as you are well aware, we continue to deal with the effects of the COVID-19 virus that is spreading across the nation and the world. Ventura County is not immune, and we've seen over the last 6 weeks the rise in positive cases in Ventura County. As of July 20th, there were 5,748 cases, positive cases with 58 deaths, with over 95,000 people tested. That is almost a week ago, and those numbers have since gone up. What we're asking the council to do tonight is confirm the continued existence of the local emergency and adopt a resolution confirming such. I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Well, I have questions and discussion, but question, first of all, and it looks like you have removed, what's been removed is the review process. In the past, I think we made a motion to review it after 60 days or 30 days. I like that review process because it makes sure that we talk about this every time. And I think it is on the mind of all of our constituents. Everyone is being affected by it, so I just think there needs to be a conversation. And reviewing it after 30 days or 6 days, make sure that conversation happens when we get together. Was it removed, or can
It was removed.
can we put it back in?
I'll admit guilt on that. It was removed, but if the council would feel more comfortable with us bringing this back in 60 days, we're more than happy to do that.
It's not a question of competence, it's just a desire to discuss and a review and feel like that we have oversight.
Understood. So that you would want to change Section 10 to...
You're so threatened. You're so threatened. You lose your oversight.
We would want to change Section 10 to allow for a review in 60 days. The city attorney has his mic, so I'm sure he has some language.
Well, just if you need language, you want to have the exact words if you're going to put it in the reso. So I don't know if something like the city council shall review this resolution in 60 days.
Yep.
How about that? Add that to the end of Section 10.
Yes.
Yes, please. Or, right. And I realize the wording says basically that it would end if the state of emergency ended. So I recognize we can hope that it ends in 30 days. We can hope that, but it's just, so I don't know if the wording needs to include that somehow.
It will end automatically if the emergency ends.
Someday it'll end.
Gotcha. So that, okay.
Okay, any other questions on that?
I just want to thank Councilwoman Lister for bringing that up, because I was looking for that too, and I read it 3 times. And I said, I don't see a deadline anywhere in here, and it's not a lack of trust. It's just a matter of, we need to hold ourselves accountable and know that we're examining what's happening during this emergency as well.
Not a problem.
And so we need to be able to do that.
Okay, looking for a motion.
Oh, Mayor, I had a couple questions on this, if I may.
Yes.
My concern is, I know the Declaration of Emergency Services grants, power to the city manager. One of the concerns that I had, and I've gotten a lot of questions on, I don't know if you guys have, but I have, emails and texts and whatnot, about and I know this is granted authority under this declaration, so I want to ask about it. On July 24th, there was a press release offering temporary outdoor business expansion permit. And this was under the DES, under this resolution, allowing for temporary outdoor business expansion permits for gyms and fitness centers. And I know that we've spoken specifically about a couple gyms that could not do the 12-foot distancing. Places of worship, indoor protests. I'm not sure how you do indoor protests outside, give a sidewalk permit or something. Personal care services, I know the state is working on that, and hair salons and barbershops. Restaurants and malls. So I had a question about the indoor protests and malls. Like, are we just saying, the whole mall gets to operate outside? Or, wouldn't we want to do it business by business to make sure we're complying with the state orders? And the reason I'm bringing it up is because, again, we're held, accountable to, this Declaration of Emergency Services. And when, I'm being asked by constituents, what does this mean? What does it entail? Because all of a sudden now we have vendors on the corners, of streets, and people are like, what the heck is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me talk to the city manager. And then we got this press release. So, and I know this is under the, authority of the Declaration of Emergency Services. So that's why I'm asking questions, because it feels to me like we should have some parameters or some boundaries to this. We don't want someone whose business is on Cuner, just setting up on, on Madera and just selling their wares. And this is a question that I've gotten from multiple residents who are very concerned about that. So Can you address that issue?
Absolutely, more than happy to. So on the mall issue, fortunately, Simi Valley is not, does not have an instance where we have an indoor mall. That would, the action that's being taken is, for instance, the Thousand Oaks Mall, where they have stores that you can only enter from the interior, which means you have to go indoors to a mall, walk through the mall, go indoors into that store. That is what the state of California is not allowing. If the Thousand Oaks, the TO Mall has an outwardly facing store, for instance, Dick's Sporting Goods, which has the door from the outside, you could go into that store, but you could not go into the mall to, for instance, the Apple store, because its only entrance is interior. So that's what the distinction is on indoor malls, for malls. On the indoor protests, that is, we took the nomenclature in our DES and on the press release straight from the county and the state of California health orders. Quite frankly, I have not found a definition of an indoor protest, so I'm not quite sure what the state intended by an indoor protest. Apparently, the state would know it if they saw it, because they're not offering any definition of it either that I could find. But we did take the language straight from the state health order. On the sidewalks, that's a different issue, separate from what is happening through the DES. The sidewalks is in September of 2018, the state of California allowed for vendors to utilize sidewalks to do sales without any permits from the local authorities. I believe that was AB 946, AB or SB, I think it was AB 946. And so what you're seeing now are people that are taking advantage of that legislation that allows for people to basically utilize the sidewalk to do sales, and they do not have to have any permits from the city to do so, nor do we have any regulatory rights other than basically ensuring that there's still access, the public has access past that, on that sidewalk, and we can check for a business tax, although I don't believe, we may not have made the change to our municipal code to even check for solicit. We have not made a change to our municipal code to look for any other type of permit which the state may allow. So I think what the sidewalks is you're seeing is just it happened to coincide with what this press release in the DES was, but they are unrelated issues. For the gyms and you mentioned massage parlors earlier, which are not allowed to open for indoor operations. Conceivably, they could come out to the parking lot and do a massage, but we'll leave that as that is.
You can even set up for hair salons. You can do the hair out in the parking lot.
You can do the hair, but you cannot do certain other aspects that may use chemicals or things of that nature, because that's an environmental issue that the state is not allowing. So there's the state, I don't want to say state EPA, but the state's environmental agency has not allowed for chemical treatments or things of that nature. But you can go to the parking lot and have a haircut. And this DES follows along the lines that we did for the restaurants that were no longer able to work. They were working at half capacity because they weren't able to have full use of their restaurants. So that's why you're seeing a lot of the restaurants outside now. So this DES is patterned after that.
And I understand that, and I really, really want to help. I've spoken to a lot of business owners in the city who are very frustrated, and they're just trying to stay alive right now.
Sure.
And I understand that completely. And when I go by and I see the CK, the gym is operating outside so they can have the 12-foot distancing. It's usually adjacent to the business. It's right next to the business. It's almost like a sidewalk sale, right? We're all going to do a sidewalk sale because of COVID right now. But it still also needs to comply with the state, with the state mandates, with the directives. And so, I would just like to see some limitation on this to say, okay, it needs to be next to your business, like I said, like a sidewalk sale, like you can't have a business on, on this side of town that's
Sure.
just decided you're going to set up on a sidewalk on the other side of town.
I think our DES indicates it needs to be adjacent to the business. Now, as an example, the CKO kickboxing that is in the center where the Target is on Cochrane, because Eggs and Things is right next door to them, they actually allowed Eggs and Things to use the sidewalk in front of their business in order to allow Eggs and Things to have additional tables. They are, the CKO Boxing is using the parking lot right next to their building. It is right next door. So we're looking for adjacencies. They wouldn't be able to, for instance, we wouldn't allow them to use the parking lot down by Trader Joe's. So we want to make sure that it's adjacent to their business. So I believe we're complying with that.
Okay, because that's not what I've been seeing, and so I want to make sure that we're not giving unfair business advantage to certain businesses in the
Correct.
city. I want to make sure that, if that's where you are, that's where you are. I don't want, the donut shop from Madera to come over here to
Oh, no.
Yosemite and start selling donuts over here.
And Councilmember Luevos, they also have to have the permission from the landowner. So not only do they get a permit from us to operate, they have to have written permission.
So can we include something like it must be adjacent, because, I don't know, is that in the permit process?
It's in the order. It's in the instructions that we provide to the business owner and what is posted online. The actual DES says it has to be adjacent to.
And my other concern is with regard to that and regard to the DES and approval of this resolution is, the enforcement of it. And I know that, you've been frustrated, as have other cities, with, whether or not this county is going to enforce the county and state mandates for, for mask wearing, for face coverings, for the 6 feet social distancing. And so when I see, and, people are sending me pictures of these sidewalk vendors, and no one's wearing a mask, and no one's social distancing, and everyone's hugging and kissing. It's not in accordance with, Section 5, which is that, that we will, abide by the state and county mandates, and that we have some sort of enforcement. And to the extent that I've spoken to the county, and the county has said it's up to, code enforcement in the city and local law enforcement to make sure, and that was a slippery slope I didn't want to go down, because I don't want to make our law enforcement, be in charge of, being the mask police. But to the extent where we have been number one and number two every single time that they have distributed the numbers for COVID-19 in Ventura County, and until we actually have enforcement, and until we actually enforce this DES, we're not going to get our numbers down. I don't know how our businesses are ever going to get back to business if we don't all start doing the job that we need to do and complying with, with the state and county, mandates. So, when we vote on this resolution, is there going to be enforcement to the extent possible? That's what I want to know.
There will be enforcement to the extent possible, yes. I mean, we are taking a compassionate approach to enforcement. We do our code enforcement. That's all they're doing now. That's all they've been doing for the last several months is COVID and enforcement. So we do get calls. We do respond where there are people not wearing masks. The county enforces masks for automotive uses and big box stores and restaurants and things of that nature. We're all chasing the same goal. We're doing the best we can.
It just seems like the big box stores are getting more support than the locally owned businesses, because they have more manpower. Costco has more people, that they can put someone at the door and say, you got to wear a mask.
Sure.
But, the mom and pop store, where it's just the owner and their son working on the counter, they don't have the manpower to be able to do that. The people power, shall we say, to be able to do that. And so to the extent that we can, make sure that we provide support for those businesses that don't have as much personnel to be able to provide that enforcement. Does that make sense?
Certainly, yes.
And so I would want to make sure that, that is, that enforcement is there, because otherwise I'm not sure what we're going to do. But I don't want to be number one and number two in terms of cases. And we have constantly been doing that. And until we actually enforce this declaration of emergency services, we will continue to do that, and we will continue to be shut down.
If I could ask a couple of questions, please.
Yes.
This order, if I understand it, ratifies DES order number 2.
Correct.
But not number 3.
Yeah, this got printed.
And number 3 was issued on July 23rd.
Correct. It was, unfortunately, the DS 3 came out after this went to print. We could certainly No.
It just seems that what we're discussing right now is DS number 3. It seems appropriate that maybe should be reviewed and added.
Correct.
Should we add that for section number 2 on page 5?
We can add that in number 2 as well. Yeah.
Can we add that in, Lonnie?
Okay, we will add it in.
If you would like to add it in, then.
The order of the Director of Emergency Services, order number 2 and order number 3?
Let's see. So right now it reads, order number 2 issued by the Director of Emergency Service on May 21st, 2020, addressing the ability for restaurants to expand seating areas, and then you want to insert, and DES order number 3.
Which was issued July 23rd.
2023, addressing businesses' use of outdoor areas.
Are hereby ratified instead of is hereby ratified.
Can you include that in the press release so that people are aware that, businesses are aware it's adjacent?
Certainly.
In the risk of extending this beyond reasonable time, I've gotten reports of actions being taken directly, like, I'll just tell you that Dugout is one of them that called me. And some of the enforcement is coming from another agency, and they have nothing but high praise for the city of Simi Valley and the steps that are being taken there. And it's, instead of, I don't even like to use the term enforcement, even though that's what it is, but it's enforcement through education. The city of Simi Valley has been going in and saying, you need to do this, we're here to help you accomplish it. And that's the way it's been going down. It's not law and order, flash a badge, and write citations. I'd like to add that comment to this group, because there is a lot of people struggling with their businesses and doing things that aren't traditional, and the city's working with them and keeping them legal with the COVID requirements and with the city requirements, and it's being accomplished, and it's being accomplished well. That's my comments on that. Now, are we ready for a motion?
Just one more question. This is just such a unique time to talk about COVID. Thank you, Mayor, for letting just a little bit more discussion. Section 5 states that all non-essential city facilities are closed to the public indefinitely, basically, I believe. So I understand, though, planning, building safety, water bills, et cetera, they can still come in because that's deemed safe, deemed essential. Is that accurate?
City Hall is deemed an essential
City Hall
facility.
is deemed, okay.
Correct.
So I guess my question is there a way that certain other city functions that people, to some people, they deem essential that could be done? For instance, could the library do story time on their doorstep outside? Could the Cultural Arts Center on their outside put up an art exhibit? So it's an outdoor 6 feet, social distancing, wearing masks, et cetera. Is it possible that some of the other city functions that we have could be performed in an outdoor capacity?
We are looking at doing those in a Zoom capacity. I would be hesitant to creating them in an outdoor capacity, because then we're trying to control numbers, social distancing, as well as face coverings, which we don't have to do in a Zoom capacity. So I know that our staff at the library and Cultural Arts Center are looking at just those things right now to try and expand the services, at least, we can provide to the public during these times.
Okay. I just want us to be really conscious that we are doing all that we can to reinstate the city services in a reasonable, safe manner. I think there's that expectation.
And in all honesty, I wouldn't even see the library or the Cultural Arts Center opening up till potentially 2021.
But as I understand, right now, anyone can check out a book from the library. They
That's
just
correct.
reserve it online. They can and they can come drive up, and it is brought out to them.
That's correct, and we have a very robust electronic catalog that people can, for lack of a better term, check out electronic books, and we have a lot of activity going on at the library right now that is actually very surprising, through both curbside pickup as well as our electronic formats.
And like all functions within the city, you can go and tour that process or be
Sure.
guided through it and educated to what
Sure.
it's actually doing.
Sure. Well, and I just want to go on record that we need to be doing absolutely everything we can to keep people employed gainfully and businesses open, period. I mean, no matter what it takes, with obviously with face masks, with social distancing, et cetera. But we just have got to keep our economy, keep people from going hungry, literally.
I think
We've
that's
got
echoing
to
what
do all that we
everybody's
can.
attempting to do.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Mayor, would it be appropriate to amend this resolution to include the order, or would it be better to have the supplemental order to assist small businesses and residential renters by making payment arrangements for
You know
that
what,
rent?
I can't hear you because of your...
Oh, I'm sorry. Would it be easier, should we amend this DES to include Mr. Hidalgo's suggestion on making payment arrangements for business and residential renters, or tenants, I'm sorry, or would it be better to do it as a supplemental?
Well, if I can address that, I know this is brought up before, and I will stick to the same my same answer. There are first of all, the governor, our moratorium on evictions runs with the governor's, which is not scheduled to expire until September 28th of this year. So that is still in place at least until September 28th. There are two pieces of legislation right now that are being discussed in Sacramento. One would provide for the repayment of any back due rent over I believe it's a 12-month period. The other is, I believe it's a 2-year period. So there are two different pieces of legislation being discussed right now. One of which, the 2-year period one, if I remember correctly, the landlord would be paid in whole by the state, and the tenant would be making payments to the state over a 2-year basis. So that addresses trying to make the landlord whole, and then the tenant then pays the state back. So I still don't feel there's a need to take that action now because the state is addressing it. There are, as I said, there are two pieces of legislation now. Both have caught the attention of the governor, and who has indicated favorably to both of them. But our moratorium still exists until at least September 28th, and my guess is it's going to extend it beyond that once the governor extends his. Tenants are still protected at least until that time. If there was a thought that that there was something going to change, we could easily take action on that very quickly, either through a DES or bring that back to the city council. We have at least 4 council meetings before that time will come.
And does that include the two California state bills that are being discussed? That has to do with repayment. Does that also include late fees that are being assessed?
They do.
Okay.
My understanding of the legislation is yes.
It includes that as well in the discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I always like to hope for the best, but plan for the worst, prepare for the worst. So if either one of those pieces of legislation should not pass for whatever reason,
We will be right back here.
what is our plan to help? Because I already know.
Yeah, we have the two plans of action is one, through a DES order, I could easily just indicate that it's a year, 6 months, 90 days, whatever that may be. So we could take that action. Our city attorney is very quick at helping me draft up these, and we could handle it through DocuSign, and it can be done within hours. Or if it looks like there's an opportunity to bring that back to the council, like I said, we have 4 council meetings between now and when September 28th is going to roll around. It's very easy to bring that back to the council or call a special meeting to bring the council back to hear that specifically.
Can I ask you, it's a practical question, but because it's happened to my students. I have had students, not here in Simi Valley, but in Reseda, and I do have students here, but who have been evicted, even though there's a moratorium on evictions in Los Angeles County, like there is statewide. But they left the property, they had to go buy groceries, they came back, they had been locked out, they had changed the locks, they couldn't get back in. So if that happens here to a resident, whether they're in a mobile home or they're a senior or, a family, whatever, and they say, you know what, to heck with the state law that says there's a moratorium on evictions, they haven't paid me rent for the past 3 months,
I got to do what I got to do, I'm going to lock them out. What would happen in that scenario? And I don't know if you can answer that, or if the chief can answer that. What happens? Like, do you go to the tenant and the landlord and say you have to let him back in? What happens?
Well,
That's for the city.
Lonnie's grabbing the microphone. I will say that, we have, the reason for eviction based upon the moratoriums at the state level as well as local is.
Well, there's two things. One is the moratorium locally is only for COVID-19 related financial difficulties, which is pretty easy for many tenants to claim, of course. So, but it can't be for loud noise, drugs, or something like that, which is an independent basis. Then the courts currently have frozen evictions right now, to my knowledge, and so it's also difficult, even for those bases, for a landlord to try to evict someone on any cause. But in the specific scenario you're talking about, all the order does is says you cannot evict somebody, but it doesn't put somebody back in that house if somebody does get evicted. Then it is now a question of could be a civil lawsuit of a serious nature between that tenant and that person, but I don't believe the sheriff nor our police or anyone else has the authority to put them back in. Now which is consistent with tenant law generally, but in our case, there were to be other remedies of the tenant versus the landlord, but one of them is not that the city puts them back in. It just isn't in the order that way.
I'm just concerned. I don't want to see that happening here. I'm just concerned for our residents and both our residents and our business tenants to make sure that that is not happening and that they're not on the street or their business, all their assets are gone. And I know that you can pursue things in the courts, but a lot of the courts are frozen right now and it takes a long time. And by the time you get back in, you get your stuff and all that. But I just wanted to see how that scenario will play out here. So that was my question. Thank you. Can I make a motion to accept the resolution as amended with the two amendments that we have?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and second. Call for the vote. As amended, we got that right?
Yes, as amended.
I vote yes.
The motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Kavanaugh absent. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, there are no items tonight for Agenda Item 8, New Business. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, next on the agenda is Item 9A, City Council Member Reports.
Okay. Councilmember Litzter, go ahead with your report.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let me start by just giving a little bit of brief summary. I recognize that all of the council members, I'm being willing to make a bet, have been attending the elected official briefings that we've been receiving every Wednesday morning through the county. And so July 1st, July 8th, July 15th, July 22nd, I'm sure that we all participated and listened and there were some questions that we could have answered, et cetera. We find out a lot of information in that setting. And I thought, I just want to put some people's mind at ease in a little bit, just to give just some statistics that I was able to glean from the last report and also on the state's, just today on DC emergency, just so people understand what we are talking about. If you look at the reason we are not going forward as far as being shut down with the state, basically it's for two reasons. It's because our 14-day case rate per 100,000 is currently at 187 as opposed to a goal of 100 people. That is an arbitrary line that's been set by the state, but nonetheless, it's probably related to the fact that we've been exceptional with our testing. Our average daily tests per 100,000 over the past 7 days has been 262, whereas our goal is 150. So we've exceeded that. And so obviously the more you test, the more positive you'll find. And so I just want to put people at ease that as a percentage, though, we are in a position that I think people should not be fearful. We should be safe. We should wear masks. We should social distance, but not fearful. That's my belief. Statistically, basically, as of July 24th, the total positive cases in Ventura County are 6,392. Statistically, as a percentage of our population, that makes us at 0.75%. So in other words, less than 1% have tested positive in our entire population of Ventura County. Barry Zimmerman, who makes the reports about availability of hospital beds, ICU beds, etc., he has reported, or what is reported today is our current hospitalization is at 87. Our current ICU is at 20. This is for the entire county. Deaths are at 67. We're so, unfortunately. But as far...
Are those 87 you said?
Yes.
ICUs, are they all COVID related?
No, as far as, I'm sorry, what I said, 84 in ICU, thank you for, if I was not clear, thank you so much. Only 22 are COVID related. Thank you for calling me. And that's very important to know that.
Absolutely.
That only 22 are COVID related throughout the entire county of that 84. So thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. And so in terms of percentages, the amount of deaths are literally 0.0078%, so less than 1/100 of 1%. And I just want people to understand that it is such a slim thing. So I just want to restore hope and faith that even though we're doing all we can, we need to go forward wisely and safely. Anyway, just want to share some of that information that I've gleaned from the different, and happy to share statistics further, but that's just enough now about some of the reports that we've received. Taking you to, on Thursday, July 2nd, I attended the SCAG Energy and Environment Committee meeting remotely through Zoom. And in that meeting, we discussed the final SoCal 2020-2045 Regional Transportation Plan. And of course, there's always still questions about the housing element and the allotments. But one of the biggest takeaways I had from that meeting was in the report given by Bob Steins, who is the Public Affairs Manager for Southern California Edison. And he spoke about public safety power shutoffs. And I've had this discussion with our city manager, but he talked about how they are now insulating lines and going through the state, going for the most insulating lines to protect against wildfires, et cetera. And what appeared to me is that there are some communities that are on a priority list to get it done. And so I'm encouraging us as a city to reach out to Southern California Edison and make Simi Valley a priority area for that line installation so that we don't have to deal with these power shutoffs that are so crippling for our citizens and for our residents. So just wanted to share that bit of information. So again, let me take you now to Wednesday, July 15th. Of course, again, the elected officials briefing call. I also attended the Simi Valley Veterans Task Force meeting via Zoom. And basically in that Veterans Task Force, they're discussing the formation of a nonprofit to kind of be an umbrella to capture all of these veteran organizations and to find a way to put them under one roof. And they're discussing possibly doing this at a county level. And I'm hopeful that they're successful in that regard. And of course, if and when they do that, then they want to look at finding a location within our city where they might be able to have veterans under one roof type of facility. Also on Wednesday, July 15th, I attended the Business Recovery Task Force. That is a task force that's comprised of our County Commissioner Bob Huber and his representatives, the Chamber of Commerce, as well as city employees, and I was fortunate to be able to attend. They have been calling businesses to let them know about resources that are available. I believe that they will look forward to sharing the information about the $2,500 that the city is going to be offering, and so I encourage us to expedite that program so that we can be sure that our residents, our businesses have access to that for this COVID response. I was also encouraged that we discussed in that setting that the county is exploring increasing their funding in the rental area and also in their business support COVID response to all those applicants, and so I'm hopeful that that will go through. Also on Wednesday, July 15th, that was my day to have fun meetings, I attended the Simi Valley Arts Commission meeting, and that was when we had the new commission was seated with the new members, some exciting things happening there. We reviewed the budget, but also what was shared was the Cultural Arts Center strategic plan. And this is a plan that outlines the next 5 years of where the Cultural Arts Center desires to be headed. And they have been very good to poll different groups and different people who are involved with the cultural arts and who have interest in that, and to come up with basically what direction they want to take. I thought it was interesting that the top 3 desired programs, and we'll see how this emerges, but would be to be included, to be increased with things that are not being done. One was film festivals, second was arts education programs, and then thirdly, children's theater. That was some of the recommendations for this long-term plan. Going on then to Wednesday, July 22nd, I also met again with the task force on business recovery. I actually shared some of the experience that we already talked this evening about CKO kickboxing and Nikki Lian, who I've had opportunity to have several conversations with. I realized that we were very proactive, I think, as a city to prepare things for restaurants, particularly to be ready outdoor. I think all of a sudden the state may have caught us by surprise a little bit to outdoor everything else. And so I'm encouraged that the city is now doing all that they can to make it easy for our businesses and their employees to operate in a safe manner outdoors, because they are the lifeblood of our community and they employ our residents. And so I'm appreciative of the efforts that the city makes to make it as easy as possible to access ability to stay in business. We don't want to lose any more businesses. So that's been some of my meetings that I've attended this month, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Luevanos.
On Monday, June 29th, I attended the Ventura County Cultural Heritage Board meeting with regard to the Burro Flats designation for historic to be on the historic registry. If you're not aware, that is the area that is where the Rocketdyne Santa Susana Field Lab is located. 25 acres of it has already been designated. There will be another hearing tomorrow with the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. If you're interested in making sure that the Santa Susana Field Lab is finally cleaned up, I encourage you to listen in and to submit comments to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors. I know everyone here on this dais has advocated, and I thank you all for advocating for the full cleanup of Santa Susana Field Lab. On Wednesday, July 1st, I actually got to hang out with the Girl Scouts, and very, very far away from each other, we went to go clean up. It was the Ventura County Beach Cleanup Day. And so we were all very far away from each other wearing gloves and masks, but we did go and clean up the San Buenaventura beach, and the girls had a great time doing that, and love to see the Girl Scouts doing good for the community. I have been attending the meetings as Councilmember Litzter, and I'm sure Mayor Mashburn and Mayor Pro Tem Judge and Councilwoman Kavanaugh have been attending the weekly Ventura County elected COVID official COVID-19 briefings. On Thursday, July 9th, I attended the Clean Power Alliance Board of Directors meeting via Zoom, where we discussed giving more money to the scholars and investing more money in our community. So one of the things that Clean Power Alliance does, besides investing in renewable energy, is giving back to the community. So they have designated $50,000 in scholarships to give to people in Ventura County community colleges, Los Angeles community colleges, who are taking up careers in renewable energy. So whether it's a solar panel installer, whether it is looking into hydroelectric, any kind of training in renewable energy, you can get scholarships of between $1,000 and $2,000 from the Clean Power Alliance. So in addition to taking care of our energy needs and making sure that we meet the guidelines for the state legislation, they're also making sure that we train people in this renewable energy industry, which is going to need, they're saying, between 100 and 200,000 people in this industry in the next decade. So if you're at a community college and you're not sure what you want to major in, but you know that you want to have a job, I highly recommend that you invest your time and energy in going into renewable energy. Like I said, it is the future. They are good union-paying jobs, and Clean Power Alliance is going to be offering double the amount of scholarships next year. So I highly recommend that you look into those scholarships for the Clean Power Alliance.
The other thing that the Clean Power Alliance did, we as a board of directors decided to give more money. So those of you that have been struggling due to COVID and you haven't been able to make your payments or your bills, there's a number of sources that are available to help you pay your electric bill through CPA. So whether you have someone that is on a medical device, like they use a CPAP machine or an asthma machine or things like that, you can get a discount, a family medical discount through CPA so that you can lower your costs. There's also, if you're low income, we're also offering like they're grants. You don't have to pay the money back. So if you can prove that you've lost your income due to COVID and you're low income, then there's money for that as well. And then there's also payment plans. So no one should have their electricity cut off if they're CPA CPA customer and they're having troubles because of COVID-19. So please reach out. Their website is phenomenal. They have all kinds of people that can speak to you in English, Spanish, Tagalog, Arabic, whatever language you need to be spoken to, they can help you out with that. And we are looking into purchasing more energy storage. The state of California has certain energy storage needs that we have to fulfill by a certain amount of time, and so that's what we are looking into. So we're slowly, signing on to get more hydroelectric and more wind and more solar so that we can make sure that we meet the California standards for renewable energy. And just know that at any given time, if you want to upgrade, if you decide you get solar panels, you want to upgrade, that would significantly lower your bill. So you can sign up for 100% clean energy. We always strive to make sure that the rates are competitive. So we will always be lower than SoCal Edison. That's our promise. On Thursday, July 16th, I attended a Black Minds Matter webinar, which looked at the effect and impacts, and this was through the NAACP, and the California Teachers Association, looking at the impact and trauma of systemic racism and racial profiling, and I highly recommend anyone who wants to know about the impact of racial profiling on communities of color to take that. It was recorded, so you can look it up. And last but not least, and I did meet with the city manager and I did meet with the city attorney during this time. I'm not going to, just to review things that were happening in the city, which we've already talked about during this meeting. I want to extend my condolences to the family and friends of Congressman and civil rights icon John Lewis, who is being laid to rest, I believe tomorrow. I was lucky enough and blessed enough to see him twice at the National Council for Social Studies conference. I can tell you the second time that I saw him in 2016 was a point in time where I was really struggling at the school that I was teaching at, and he really inspired me to continue doing the work that I was doing. And one of the things that he said was, if you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have a moral obligation to do something about it. And that inspires me every day as a teacher, as a mother, as an advocate in the community, as an elected official, to make sure that we call out things that are not right, and that we get into what he says, what he would say is good trouble. And so I wish you Godspeed, Congressman John Lewis. And that is my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My report's going to be brief. On Friday, July 3rd, I was at the VCTC meeting via Zoom, and I was excited to hear that VCTC is going to hold a discussion later on amongst itself with our committee about looking at regional transportation. I think it's about time we had that discussion again. The last time it was discussed was back in 2012. Other than that, my report's going to be very short. I have attended on the phone most of those elected briefing calls about COVID, and other than that, that's about the extent of my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Myself, I attended the elected briefing calls, and there were several of them. One I missed because I was out of town. I was here listening to the discussion about power lines. If you recall, it was about 6 months ago I brought in a sample of the conductor that had the insulation on it, and that's what they're moving to, which will help. You got to remember that the SoCal Edison has 55,000 miles of lines, so I don't expect to see them buy 55,000 miles of insulated conductors and get them up. And it looked to me like they're limited in size, so it's going to be somewhat restrictive. Anything we can do to get them to quit turning off the power, I think is a good thing. If you go back in history, they had a thing called Bulletin 22 where they shut down the power whenever there was brush fires and wind, but they seem to have forgotten about that. They don't like it when you bring that up, that this is nothing new. The thing is prior they did it in such a manner they didn't shut people down in the cities and what have you. Anyway, I like to see them coming with new technology to get us through this, and that's a good thing. On Wednesday, July 22nd, I attended the Simi Valley Kiwanis Club Zoom meeting. No need for a mask. I was in my office by myself and attended that meeting, but it was good to hear from the Kiwanis. They wanted to know just a basic rundown on what's happened economically here in the city, and they had a lot of questions about COVID, and that was convenient because of the elected officials briefings that we're getting, which I think are quite well, and I have to say Patrick Maynard is very good at running those meetings. That is it. I don't want to bore you with all the rest. Seems like I spent a lot of time at City Hall, but I can't tell you what goes on. It's just a lot of communications with people. I did have a meeting with a group of people that are the principals that are involved with the Samaritan Center, and there's discussions going on there, and nothing's solved. I can't really report back to you any solid advancements or what have you. They're having some problems over there. They've come to the city looking for help, and the city is talking to them, and we'd like to see the Samaritan Center continue on and continue doing a fine job that they've always done. And that's the end of my report. So now we go to future agenda items. Councilmember Luevanos.
I don't know if it's a future agenda item, but at one point we had discussed the RV ordinance, and it was supposed to come back to us. When is it going to come back to us?
Good question.
Yeah, I think if I recall that it needed to go to one or two neighborhood councils, which they're working on right now because we're starting to work with Zoom.
Can we set a deadline for that?
Yeah,
because I don't want it to go on forever.
Yeah, let me shoot let me get a status. I can send an email to the council and give you an update on when it's going back.
Within 60 days, within 30 days, something?
I would be pure guessing at this point in time. So
60 days? 60 days?
We can give that a shot.
Okay.
Yeah, but I need to talk to our staff and find out where it's at.
Okay, I don't, many people have been asking me about that, and with what's going on with the housing crisis right now, I know it's a concern of a lot of residents, and people keep asking me when it's coming back, and I don't have an answer for them, so that's why I want to set a timeline and say 60 days, 30 days, something.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to get a status of it. I can tell you, and I look at the chief, because we've dealt with several folks that are parking RVs on their property or out on the street and utilizing them for quarantine purposes or keeping loved ones safe from other families, and we are, I don't want to say looking the other way, but we're doing the best we can to provide that opportunity for everyone.
I mean, I walk and there's been people that they have their truck on for 3 hours so they can charge the battery.
Sure.
And we're all breathing in the toxic, the fumes of whatever it is that they're charging.
Well, that's a different story.
So
I mean, if they're running their generator, and that's something else, that's something we can address. But
so I understand that there's issues with quarantine and COVID, but I just want to make sure it comes back to us.
Yes. Okay. I will get something to the council.
Thank you. That's my only request. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you.
Just to follow up on what Brian said earlier, and the conversation was about street vendors or sidewalk vendors, and you had mentioned that maybe should look at permitting, or at least investigating what permits are in place. Is that something that?
That's something that the police department and the administrative services department have been working on. We can probably get that. That's probably a 60-day time frame that we can take a look at bringing that back.
I'd like to actually look at that, just because I think it is becoming more prevalent.
Yep.
So it would be good.
Yeah,
You can send it to all of us,
that's
Brian.
one for the
We'd
entire
appreciate it.
council.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
And then, is it time I would like to consider developing a business task force. I'm just recognizing we have an outdoor mall. This would be the perfect time to bring business in an outdoor, safe environment. I don't know, I just wondered if this might be a time to consider developing that kind of a task force.
Just in specific to the mall, I just had a meeting with the mall ownership on Friday, and they'll be reaching out to all the council members to give you an update on where they're at. So I can just give you a brief
Well, and
update.
aside from that, let's take aside from that,
Yep.
just recognizing that we've just had so much impact, wondered if we could maybe would it be worthy of maybe considering that a task force that investigates ways to support businesses beyond what we're doing? Just a thought.
The chamber has had a economic development committee.
Yes, they do have that.
And that committee is comprised of not only chamber members, but other folks. And I would think before we reinvent the wheel, we take a look at what they're doing and look at, see if that's a place that you would feel comfortable working with, is that committee, because it's already formed. It's they have meetings, and it
Is
addresses.
anyone welcome to attend, Mayor, or is that
Yes.
just for chamber members?
They're doing it on Zoom now, and then prior to COVID, they were meeting at the chamber meeting. But that is a good venue for businesses, and those are specifically the things that we talked about at that.
But can any business attend, or do they have
Yes.
to be a chamber member? Any
No,
business
you
can
don't
attend?
have to be a
Okay, I
member.
don't think they know that. I think that they should advertise that, because I don't think they're aware that if they're not chamber
We can work with the chamber on getting
owners,
the message out.
because someone asked me, and they're like, I'm not a member, I can't afford it right
You
now.
don't have to be a member.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Judge, or, excuse me, wait a minute, Mike. Are you not?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Judge.
I have no comments on anything.
Okay, I have something, I don't know if it's a future agenda item, quite likely, but it's a request of the city attorney. Recently, the city of Santa Monica, who was required to go to districting, and they fought it and lost in court, and they appealed the process, and apparently they prevailed in the appeal. So I would like to have a report back from, I'm assuming it's from the city attorney's office, the ramifications of their appeal, what they actually accomplished, and what does that give them or does not give them, and
Yes.
how, if any way, it affects us, and any tie-in that there would be there. So
Well, that could be a big change in the law, and I would be happy to, maybe the best way, and I'll just propose this, would be to send an analysis to the whole council, and then if you want to then bring it to open session in some capacity, based on what that says, then you would bring it,
okay, so we can get a report from you,
Yes.
and then we can determine if we want to
if you want to take
agendize
further,
it or
any
not.
action. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Okay.
I'm
that-
sorry, Mayor, I have one more 9B request, and I'm sorry.
What's that?
I wanted to look at our ordinance on massage parlors to see if there's any way we could limit the number of massage parlors and vape shops that we have. Those are both, the massage parlors is because of the report that we had earlier, and the vape shops is something that Youth Council has been asking for a long time. So I'd like to revisit those ordinances.
Okay. Good. Okay, that's it. I thought we were in a position where we could adjourn tonight the way I'd like to adjourn, and that's without in memory of anybody, but it would be terrible not to adjourn in memory of Congressman John Lewis. We as a nation currently are honoring him as he lies in repose at the Federal Capitol Building. And for those of you that don't know, he marched with Martin Luther King and fought his entire life for the rights of the blacks in the South. And of course, he fought for everybody's rights. He was a great guy. And at any rate, I would like to adjourn tonight in his memory. And I'd also like to quote, and I wish I knew who said it, they go, you normally say rest in peace, and in the case of John Lewis, you say rest in power.
Yes.
So with that, meeting's adjourned.